Have you ever had like an injury from overuse like this?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I did my quad a little while ago on the hat squat, actually.
Okay.
I used a peptide BPC 157 to help recover that, and it worked like
What did you call
wonders.
it?
A peptide BPC 157. There's another one that I've used.
Wait,
as
is that
well.
a drug? What is that?
It's probably technically a drug. It's legal. I think it's like for research use, but it's got amazing research on it,
Okay.
on the healing benefits.
Okay. I've
And
never
so I
heard of it.
used that, and it worked really well.
Okay.
Like I felt like Wolverine.
Wow.
Yeah. It was incredible. It probably like, cause I was on the hack squat and I started coming down and it like something like twanged
Uh-huh.
and I was like, whoa. And I kind of like put the weight back and I was like, whoa, that didn't feel good. And then I kind of like walked around the gym and I was like, yeah, that feels super gnarly. And I finished the rest of the workout not using my legs. Then later that day, I was like, oh, that's really sore. And then in 3 to 4 days, I was perfectly fine.
Huh.
And it was incredible.
So how do you get this?
I'll try and research it.
Okay.
I'll research it.
How did you get it that day? Or you already had it?
No, I ordered it off a guy that I knew that had it. I know a guy that has a lab that creates it.
Wow. By the way, what a cool life. You and I met on Monday. Tuesday morning, I had a great 2-hour-long podcast interview.
Yeah.
This morning, I had a great 90-minute long podcast interview. And then I come to talk to you again. It's like, man, this is fun in the world of ideas.
What's the most interesting part of the conversation?
Well, okay. You've heard of Basecamp, AKA 37 Signals?
Yeah, Jason Fried.
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah, so that's who I was talking with for 2 hours yesterday. Yeah.
No.
So he and I are kind of friends. Well, no, that's stretching the term. We're acquaintances, but we hung out 14 years ago.
Yeah.
We've known of each other for like 18 years. 14 years ago at South by Southwest in Texas, we finally spent hours together shooting the shit. Since then, we've emailed and I think talked on the phone once. 1 year ago, he was here in New Zealand and we were supposed to go camping together.
Yeah.
He made it all the way to Auckland, and then Auckland was having a major flood thing. The airport was closed for 2 days. He ran out of time and had to fly back to America. So he was like an hour away, and we didn't meet. I bought him a towel and togs and everything. Because he said, "Oh, I don't have a swimsuit." That's all right. I'm going to buy you togs because that's what we call it here. And
budgie smugglers.
What?
Budgie? You never heard of budgie smugglers? Okay, so maybe that's more of an Australian.
You have budgies. We don't. What is it? What's a budgie smuggler?
You know, you know what a budgie is?
The bird.
It's a type of bird.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, the budgie smugglers is like togs, speedos, but they're called budgie smugglers because obviously, I guess it looks like you're trying to smuggle a budgie.
Nice. I'd never heard that.
Okay.
Anyway, so yesterday, finally, we got on like a 2-hour-long podcast interview, and we just couldn't stop talking. He ran out of time after 2 hours. He's like, I gotta go. But it was
I've got to admit, you two are just phenomenal. I love Jason's stuff so
same.
much. Like, so much of what he talks about and how he does it. That's so funny because the two of you are kindred spirits.
Very, yeah.
Kindred spirits.
And what's funny is it was set up in a way that there was a third guy that was the host, who was a guy in India, who organized the whole thing and said, I want to do a podcast where I'm the host, but you two will be the guests together. So basically at the beginning, he said, no, why don't you each do a short introduction? That's all he had to say. Jason and I talked for the next 2 hours. He just sat there watching. And every now and then I was like, I think you're awake, right? He's like, yes, keep going.
That's amazing. So what did you talk about?
Fuck. Everything. I mean, like this.
It's so gnarly. That's so cool to think.
He's a thoughtful dude.
Yeah.
Hold on. What was... I luckily have a recording of it. I'm so thankful for this because especially if we talk about a bunch of different things, it could even be later that day, you just have a faint memory.
Oh, absolutely.
Of like, what was it? There was something, okay, what was it?
Yeah. From Jason, thank you so much. One thing that I've taken from him that's been so useful is long form writing as a communication tool within the company. And that for me has just been profound. It's truly forced me to think everything really through to be able to put it into a piece to then to be able to communicate to the rest of the team. Hey, this is what we're going to be doing for the next 6 weeks.
Right.
And only just work. And again, even the 6-week things too. I mean, he's like, we're working 6-week blocks, not big future plans or anything like that. And just take it 1 6-week block at a time. Like, it's really, the two of you in one room would be really cool.
It was. It was, I feel like that would be an interesting format to do more often.
Yeah.
I think some British talk show hosts do that, where instead of just having one guest at a time, they'll bring out a few at a time. So they'd be like Johnny Depp and, another actor and then like a singer, and they bring them out and they keep them on the couch together so that they can interact.
They can banter together.
Yeah. So it's like, it'd be really interesting for me to talk to a bunch of people and say like, hey, why don't we do like a twin guest thing so we can banter together.
Okay, so what's a thread that you would want to pull with Jason?
I remembered it this morning when I woke up. Okay, well, I'll say one that I know that we did pull on, which is I asked him how drive is anger or rebellion at like, I don't like the way things are done. I think they can be done better, or that's bad and I know I can make it good. What's funny is he latched on a little too much to the word anger. He's like, well, I'm not an angry person. Oh, no, don't get upset. I just find it, and I say, I know, I'm just using the word angry loosely. But to me, it's incredibly inspiring if I hear like a bad song.
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Yeah.
The hook was too short. You didn't read this, or no, it got boring there. You got to make it more interesting here. Or if I read a bad article, it makes me want to fix it. Right. And I get that, a lot of that sense from 37 Signals. A lot of what they do is kind of in rebellion to the way things are done.
Yeah, correct.
Most people
Yeah.
But here in 37 Signals, we believe this.
Like they just launched a new email platform.
Hey.
Yeah. And so I'm joining the dots now with how much did he go, God damn it, Gmail is done.
Exactly.
I want to do this. Yeah, I like that.
But I'm surprised that he kind of said basically, no, not very much, or I take inspiration from it. I'm very calm. I don't get upset. I'm like, I didn't,
Yeah. Okay, I like that. What grinds your bones then?
Fun question is, I noticed it's fun to ask yourself what has continued to upset you for many years, not just right now, but if there's something that's like an ongoing annoyance over years, maybe that's something that should be addressed. And so for me, it was the thing I started to riff on last year about tech independent, that I think too many people are just selling their soul to the cloud, completely dependent on the cloud. Without the corporate cloud, you don't have anything. Nothing belongs to you. You trusted the cloud.
Yeah.
And I think that's a shame. And I think of the metaphor of learning to drive, that yes, it takes a little effort to learn to drive, but then you're set forever.
Yeah.
I think of that with some computer stuff, just a little bit of upfront effort to run your own file server, your own web server, your own mail server. It's only a few hours of your life to learn how to do this stuff. It's not that hard, but once you do it, you're free forever. No dependencies. Whereas imagine a world where there was more money behind convincing you to not drive. The way that cloud companies really try to convince you to not do this stuff yourself. No. But transferring photos from your phone to your computer, much too hard for you. Let us do it. Give us all of your photos. They all belong to us now. We'll take care of it for you forever. For $9.95 a month for the rest of your life. You can't get your photos except through us. You just have, sorry, they don't put it that way, but that's like, that's the side effect, is that you don't have access to your photos except through the service that you pay $9.95.
Why does that piss you off?
Because it's sad that people fall for that and get dependent on it.
Yeah.
And I feel that I can see through the corporate strategy of just like, let's get people on a subscription service. We'll tell them, don't worry, you don't have to spend $100. No. It's only $5 a month.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I heard Jason not that long talk about actually how he wanted to go against the subscription model.
That's actually his newest thing, once.com. He got the domain. Okay. Oh, see, I didn't ask him about how they found it worth it to buy these domain names like once.com, a.com.
Hey, yeah.
Once.com is their new, like, he's building a lot of software under the once.com umbrella now, which is software that with no subscription. You buy it once, it's yours forever. That tech independence thing, that's why I decided to finally start talking about it publicly. It's like, this has annoyed me for years. I feel bad that companies convinced people that they have to subscribe forever now.
I remember, was it you with Tim Ferriss? We went really deep into that because I really appreciated that. That was super cool. No, that was so good. And I loved the detail and the nuance going into it as well. And it really just being like, it's a little bit of effort for a lot of sovereignty later.
Yes, sovereignty, good word. Did you ever dig into that whole like five flag sovereign man individual spread out my passport and my
totally.
residency?
Like,
Okay.
carry, like it was like, I remember having the plan. So, okay, with myself, so we're a family of 6, my wife, 4 children. I'm in the process of getting Irish passports because my father's side's Irish.
Fuck yeah.
My mother's side's Chilean. So
You're
Chilean
gonna get that?
passports. Yeah. So Irish passports, Chilean
Wait,
passports.
is the Chile stuff already done? You got that?
No, it's in
Okay.
process.
Wow. Okay.
What else was there? Traveling and being able to carry a bit of gold on you. A cold storage with crypto on it. The 3 flags scenario. Did you say 5?
I said 5.
Yeah, I was going off
5.
3. So currently right now, I'm a non-Australian tax resident. I might not want to publish this. We'll see what happens. So,
Beep.
Yeah, actually, no, I think no, this is legit. So it's fine. I'm a non-Australian tax resident. I have an Indonesian investor kitas and
Investor what?
kitas,
What is
like a
kitas?
visa,
Okay.
like an investor visa in Indonesia.
Wait, is it, so that's ongoing? Like it's like a long-term resident visa, so you can go back?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I have to renew it in 3 years,
Okay.
something like that. And the company's set up in Singapore.
Cool.
That's the current setup right now.
And main banking?
Singapore.
Okay.
Was in Dubai and actually recently moved it all to Singapore. My reasoning was it was starting to become hard as nails to deal with Dubai banking system. And it was it's very archaic still. Like I remember when I had to go to Dubai at the end of last year to do like my biomedical stuff. Like I had to do a chest x-ray. And then when they were doing your fingerprints.
Wait, had to? Do you mean as part of a
As part
resident?
of to get my Emirati ID.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had my I still had my Emirati ID
Oh, okay.
as well.
How long has it been since you lived there? Like for 12 years?
Well, I redid it last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I redid it last year because the company was set up in Dubai
Okay.
and I had to have my Emirati ID to have that set up. And then I remember as well, I thought it was really funny because I was doing the fingerprints and then they like fingerprint the side of your hands.
Okay.
And I was like, why are you printing this? And I was like, oh, because when you sign a check, you'll leave an imprint of the side of your hand as you sign the check. And I was just like, whoa, that's archaic. Like they're still doing
thinking in
literally
terms
signing
of
checks.
leaning your hand on a piece of paper. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
And the 9% corporate tax as well that was recently introduced. So I was like 9% Dubai, and sliding scale upwards Singapore.
Okay.
I rather Singaporean banking system, the Singaporean dollar, and just the ease. It was
Did you go to DBS?
no.
OCBC?
Yes.
OCBC, cool.
Yeah.
They used to, what did you, Bank of Singapore? Or OCBC directly?
OCBC directly.
Okay.
And Wise.
Wise. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love Wise.
Yeah.
OCBC is the one that made me a Singapore resident in 2010. They were my sponsor
Oh, really?
because I came in through the financial investor scheme.
Yeah. Yes.
So I put, at the time it was only 5 million Singapore dollars.
Yeah.
Now it's more or maybe gone. But yeah, and then OCBC through their private bank, Bank of Singapore, such bullshit. They kind of the catering to the, you're not a normal person, you're a special person. You need a special lift to take you to the special floor with a special.
You're not a part of the second grade citizen.
Yeah, exactly. They had me to one of their events and the guy showed me that he was so proud that on the OCBC credit card, he said, look, he asked me, he said, you have one, right? I said, okay. He said, sorry, the Bank of Singapore credit card. The rim, even though it was a black card, the rim around the edge was red. And he's like, you don't know how much effort that took to make. And it's just like, oh God, that's so kind of sad in a way to me that like people who get off on the prestige of the plastic card itself. And I found myself occasionally accidentally falling into that mindset. It's like, I do deserve the best. Then I'm like, actually, wait, that's the wrong mindset to be in when it comes into like financial stuff. Because as soon as you get into that mindset, that means you're the whale that somebody's trying to fleece, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like, put me down at the local credit union.
Yeah.
With the, where they're bragging about how they're going to save you 50 cents on fees. That's where I want to be. Just, I'll have an account with those guys because, it's no prestige.
I think it's actually a thread that I'd love to pull with you, which is the case of like, I was thinking yesterday between our chat, of like, Rene Girard's mimesis theory.
Ooh.
And okay, so for example, last time I was in Dubai, I don't think I'm that a materialistic person. Still than me wearing these clothes. Like nothing really changes.
Mhm.
And like I said in the last conversation, I actually don't own a car. My wife owns the car. I have a bicycle because I was just like, I don't want to have to get a second car if I don't have to need it right now. Not going to go there. And I remember being in Dubai and I bought a really expensive watch. Now, this is a crude way I'm going to say it, but and I joked with a friend, I was like, buying a really nice watch is one of the gayest things you can do because you're only going to get compliments off other guys. And I was like, oh my God. And it was, when I left, I was like, I'm not a watch guy.
By the way, that was a great setup. You had me wondering like, oh, how crude is he about to get right now?
I'll try and keep that as the crudest.
That was great.
But it was very much, and then I was like, oh my God, like this watch is worth a lot more than most people's cars. Like this is ridiculous. Just because I could, I did, and because I was there, and obviously being in Dubai, do you know what I mean? The glitz and the glam and all of those kind of things. I was thinking yesterday, so I'm using that as an example, but I was thinking yesterday, how do you have a force field against mimesis? Because you do things the way that you do them, and they're like, one way I could say is like it's against the grain. And for example, even thinking about like, one, how did you actually research how to live? I want to really go deep. How do you choose what you say yes to? And I was thinking yesterday, God, I'm going on tangents here, but we'll wrap this all up. It will make sense. How to live to me, and I think we talked about this on Monday, was like every chapter's like, yeah, that's true. Next chapter, oh my God, that's true. So if it's all true, God damn it, you now wrote another book. Fucking hell, Derek. If it's all true, what's useful, but what is it that is truly deserving of your yes? I'll stop
all right,
there.
few threads here. Okay, mimesis.
Yeah.
What's worth doing?
Yeah.
How to live. All true. All right, let's see if we can remember those. The Rene Girard thing, I've only looked into it a little bit, but this is one of those ones like, there's two levels of embarrassed. I'd be a little embarrassed to say what I'm about to say next if it was only me and you.
Yeah.
And now knowing that this might get out, which is fine, this part that I'm going to say next, it's interesting, this kind of slightly public embarrassment, but I'm okay with that. It's actually a fun challenge. When I read about it, it gave me a little more swagger. I'm like, yeah, I don't do that, do I? Like, I don't try to imitate others, the most part. But I think he addresses that in the kind of the that deliberate, like the billionaires that wear ripped jeans in Silicon Valley, right? Yeah. So I related more to that. Like maybe I'm deliberately rebelling against expectations, maybe. But I think it's more, no, okay. I do think I verge almost towards hipster where I'm trying to deliberately not do what everybody else is doing. If everybody else uses the JavaScript programming language, well then damn it, even if I like JavaScript, I have a really hard time considering using it because everybody uses it.
Can I interject with one thing super quickly to keep that thread? Because the thought that I have right now and the uniqueness is, and where I see many people not do this, and where you do it correctly in my eyes, being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian is not contrarian.
Right. If every goth is wearing black in high school, they're not rebelling, they're conforming.
Exactly,
right.
Exactly. Yeah. So, sorry, how do you then actually...
Right, so that's where it's not quite hipster, because then it would be like, I use a manual typewriter and, the handlebar mustache or whatever that everybody's doing.
Yeah.
Even that voice affectation, right? So instead, I think I'm so driven by this philosophical approach to life. And again, I wince a tiny bit at that word philosophical because it makes it sound like I'm channeling the ancient wisdom. But it's more just questioning, right? Like, anything. Why am I drinking this cup of tea? Do I really love Earl Grey that much? Is this a habit? Is it bringing me joy? That was a fun definition of a habit I read. Something that you continue to do even though it's no longer giving you the reward. I'm like, ooh, that's a good definition. But in this case, it's, oh man, I really love that. Especially if you drink it at the right temperature, you can feel the warmth going down your gullet a bit and just that like slight licorice of Earl Grey. So no, I don't think that's just a habit. This is giving me active joy, but that's worth questioning, right? So same with other things I do in life. Why am I using this programming language? Why am I using my phone in such a way? Why am I living where I'm living? Why do I think it's important to have a prestigious private bank account? Why do I wear a watch? Is that to tell the time? Or is it something else? So I think through just being a curious person and I enjoy thinking, I think it's fun to think. I just end up questioning these things. And then I just have to think for myself based on maybe the values I've taken in from other sources, maybe starting as an influential teenager and reading a Tony Robbins book or whatever. And then all the books I've read since then, some of them I disagree with, some I agree with. And I think I like that value system. I like that way of thinking. And so I think I hold these little principles inside or these to measure things by and say like, that's a good thing. Say focus is good, distraction is bad, right? So I do have a value system like that. I kind of run it through my value system and I say, okay, well, why am I really doing this? So that came up a lot with money. Money to me is so philosophical. It's so abstract and so loaded with meanings that were projected on it by others. And sometimes we just accidentally adopt them without realizing we've adopted them. So you have to stop and ask yourself, so some people are pursuing money for money's sake, where the whole point of money is supposed to be a neutral trade of value. It's the in-between thing that you use to get what you really want. And so I often ask myself that minimalist kind of direct question of, well, what do I really want? What's the whole point? Why do I think I need a romantic relationship? Because this. Maybe the relationship itself is not the point, or maybe the beauty of the partner is not the point. The beauty is this other. It's like, it makes you just question all these things. So if I seem anti-mimetic, I think it's because I have a little bit of that hipster tendency to just want to not do what everybody else is doing. But even that might come from this idea of if everybody's thinking the same thing, then nobody's thinking. So if everybody's doing things one way, I try extra hard to challenge it because it seems like people often aren't thinking anymore if everybody's just doing the same thing. But yeah, I just get one of my deepest personal joys from an old assumption, this feels weird to talk about, but I think I mentioned 2 days ago that 20 months ago, I broke up with the girl in the statue down there.
Yeah.
And
the crying nurse.
And I immediately after we broke up thought, okay, well, I need to get a new relationship. I need to get out there right away. I need to start dating. I need to meet somebody. And so I did for a few months. And then while I was in India, I met somebody that instantly turned into a relationship. But I'm glad that happened because right away it made me stop and go, whoa, wait, what am I doing now that I've got one? So it's like now the idea of the dog is chasing a car.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it if you get
it?
So I got it. I got the next girl. And I went, oh, wait, now that I got the car.
Yeah. What do I do with
that metaphor? I just realized I don't actually want it. And so starting then in February 2023, I went, I think I'm going to enjoy having no relationship and not wanting one, not pursuing one, even refusing one if offered. And I'll admit, I've been thriving and flourish. I've been happier than I can really ever remember being in my whole life.
Wow.
This past 20 months, because it's like this major thing that I was pursuing ever since the age of 15 or something, right?
Yeah.
So that's, how many years is that? That's, let's say 6 years of finding or minding a relationship. And it was a lot of my life's energy spent on that. And that's been most of my time on earth. And to finally stop doing that, I just feel I have 8 times more energy for everything else.
Really?
And I love it. I'm spending more time learning, more time creating, more time on me time, and of my non-work energy then goes to my kid.
Yes.
And he and I have such a great relationship that's so rewarding. And I love that I have so much energy to give him. So whatever he wants to do, the answer is yes. So that's something that I got such happiness out of challenging that old assumption. The assumption is I need a relationship. For other people, the assumption is I need a big house. The assumption is I need to be well paid. I need a good job. Or the assumption is I need a college degree. Or there's so many of these things that it's conventional wisdom. We just do it. Boy, you got me on a rant, huh? I get such joy out of realizing that I've busted up one of those. Whoa, because it's suddenly you replay your whole life going, oh my God, this thing I was assuming this whole time, it turns out it's not needed. Whoa, it's huge.
Which is most things?
No, some of them you do find out that, like my example of the cup of tea, some of you realize, no, this actually, I actually really do want this. This really makes me happy.
For me, it was maybe 12 to 18 months ago, whatever it was. And I remember I went through this period of just questioning everything in my life. I questioned, do I want to stay married with my wife? I questioned, do we still want to be living here? I remember standing in the gym one day And to stand in one place for 3 minutes can seem like a really long time. But I remember it would have been a couple of minutes where I just stood in the middle of the gym and I went, do I just want to be this guy that does this? Like, I've been doing this since 18. Is this who I want to be? Is this what I want to do? Like, it was the middle of the day. I've always trained and done that. And I was like, do I want to do this? And I remember going through like everything and just like questioning those parts. And again, I was like, yeah, I do want to be this person. I do enjoy this. This does bring me happiness and joy and fulfillment and all those good feelings. There were many things that were, I did still want to stay married to Lauren. And I was like, yeah, this is fantastic. I'm loving this. And I think there was actually some power of me truly questioning it as well. Though it was very unsettling and disturbing through so much. And it would have caused a lot of doing not nice feelings to everyone around me, because it was like I was just causing an earthquake everywhere. For me, it was trying to find what was true to me, because I had a very good friend of mine, James. I remember him saying to me one day, you take other people's opinions a little too heavily. And I want to people please. I have a strong tendency to make sure that I can like have other people happy and I'm pleasing them. And so I had to question, I'm putting them before me. So what is it that I want? And I found that question. What is it that Chris wants? That was really difficult for me to actually answer. Really difficult to answer.
Wow. That's tough, isn't it? To when you've been taking other people's. Yeah. That's like an old breakup for me. We were so intertwined for 6 years. And when we broke up, it took me almost 2 years to remember who I am.
Wow.
When not being her guy, because sometimes it gets really intertwined where you think of it as your identity, but no, it was actually something you were doing for others. And how do you separate that from what you would do if you were not doing it for others?
So if I can connect that with How to Live then, because this has been, I was up last night thinking about.
I'm honored.
1,300 pages?
The rough draft, yeah.
Rough draft, 1,300 pages. Firstly, to get to that, what did you actually read through, study, learn, research? What did you actually go through and then try to then distill to then get to 1,300 pages? Firstly, I want to try and start at the very beginning. Okay, so the storybook I was telling you on Monday I was reading. Anyway, I was reading more of it last night. And he says, a story doesn't begin.
Oh, the book about stories.
Yes, about storytelling. And he goes, a story doesn't begin at the beginning. A story begins when change occurs. What came into your zeitgeist to be like, I need to write How to Live?
Okay, easy answer for you. Surprisingly easy. Number one was just having a kid, and that thing that I think every parent has felt, which is, oh my gosh, what if I don't live to be 80? I want to teach my kid everything I've learned. I want to try to compress all the good stuff I've learned in life and share with them. And he's only 1 year old now, but I'll put it into a document or something that he can have later, whether it's a video. So I think a lot of new parents have felt that. So I felt that. And then it was just my excitement and love about that book called Some by David Eagleman, or I just loved that format. And I had always read so many nonfiction books, some of them that's when I just had that flash of inspiration while driving down the road. It's South Island, New Zealand, driving down the road, suddenly just went, oh my God, I want to make a book called How to Live. I had the title right away.
Wow.
That I'm going to take the culmination of everything I've ever learned, it's good for my kid, but put it into the format of Some by David Eagleman, where every chapter is going to have this, every chapter is going to be confident that it has the answer for how to live. And yet it's going to disagree with all the other chapters. And then that's a little bit kind of snarky in itself, because all these people that write, Obstacle is the Way, no, Atomic Habits, no, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. All these books, actually Marx doesn't do that, but Marx doesn't have the confidence that this is the right answer. But most self-help books or nonfiction books like this are written with the attitude that this is the way. And it's just so funny when you put them next to each other, like, yeah, he also has the way. Or especially if you think about that with religions, the old Monty Python Life of Brian kind of approach. It's like, random people on the street going, no, I've got the answer. So I got excited in that format. Okay, so then the answer of how to make it happen was easy, because first I just sat down and wrote my ass off, thinking of the general idea of what I want to put in the book, just fingers just flying and typing and typing and typing. And then when I felt that I had drained out everything that was on the top of my head, I keep notes on all the books I've read since 2007. I read books before that as well, but 2007 was the year I said, I need to start keeping notes. So I've got 400 of these now. So all I did is I took hundreds of hours and I Yeah, let me think about this. It was about 400 books, and I spent at least an hour going through each one again, going through just the notes, not the book itself, but just going through my notes and looking at each individual idea, thinking whether that was something I've internalized or not, or want to share or not. And if I've internalized it, my challenge to myself was to not use their words, but to show that I've internalized it by putting it in my own, which had the aesthetic benefit of not needing to quote,
Yeah.
Okay. Andy Warhol says, Nicholas Nassim Taleb says, Socrates says. No, I just wanted to internalize it, put it into my own words, which then became a writing challenge. Can I say it better than he said it? And then that's what I spent 2 years doing. So then I did lots of that until I had like 1,300 pages, right? And I said, okay, I think that's everything. I've gone through all 400 books. I've gone through all of my thoughts. I've thought of everything I've ever learned, like life lessons, all my old articles, my old interviews. I think this is everything I got. I'm sure as hell not going to publish a 1,300 page book. So here we go. And then I just went back through and spent 2 more years just from the start, went through the whole thing and I did some more categorization. I think at first I had 36 different categories, and some of them were just weaker than others. So I merged them into others and found the common thread. And then, as I told you yesterday, the mastery chapter was 3 times longer than the rest. And my friend said, you're revealing your bias. You're killing the point of trying to make it seem like they're all equally the answer. I was like, oh, so I had to chop 2/3 of the mastery chapter. But it was just 2 years of just hours and hours and hours every day, just going through it like, what's the essential point here? How can I reduce this? A whole page of thoughts. Can I come up with a sentence or two that captures the core lesson of this whole page of ideas? And I challenge myself to try to get to the essence of that.
Was it conflicting for you to figure out how do you live when you've got all of these truths that you're like, because you're arguing for each one.
Right.
So what I find very fascinating is like, you're arguing for all of these points and doing it extremely well.
And it's all sincere.
Yeah. And so how do you not just become a hodgepodge and a fruit salad of like, oh my God, like.
This is so self-centered to talk about this, but you're asking, so.
I will pull on the thread later on the case of why do you think authors will not say what they're so proud of? Because you've written about how you're proud of how to live.
Yeah. I accidentally interrupted you and I said yes too soon.
Yeah, what did you think I was going to say?
That while writing it, was I convinced by every chapter? So that was an interesting storm of emotions and sway when writing it. Is with every chapter, I would work on one chapter at a time for a couple of days at a time. And when writing that chapter, I was completely convinced, you know what, even though I know I'm writing this book called How to Live, this is really the way, this is it. Those other ones, I'm glad I'm putting those ones in the book, but I mean, this is it, live for the moment. Everything else is just imagination. It's really this physical moment we're in. That's what it's all about. That's all there really is. And then 2 days later, I'd be working on the next chapter, live for the future. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Never mind those other ones. This really is it. This really is the smartest way to live for the future. And every chapter I worked on, I was completely convinced that this is it. This is the way. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess it's working because it's kind of fucking me up. And I'm the one writing it. And every 2 days, I'm like, wait, no.
It's fucking me up reading it.
Good. Yeah. That was a desired effect. I wanted people to be tossed about because it makes you realize that any one of these can be true. And for what it's worth, I don't know if I've ever said this publicly, that the one idea that kind of started me on the whole idea of the book, believe it or not, was the Make Memories one. Because I read the book called Moonwalking with Einstein, where he was meeting with memory experts. And one of them, in an offhand conversation, said something like, if at the end of your life you can't remember your life, then what was the whole point of living? And I went, whoa, that is so true. That is so profound. And I thought, therefore, the way to live should be to make memories. That should be our primary objective, is to make memories, keep them alive, do unique things, novel things, never get stuck into routine, keep things new, to have the most memories possible, preserve them, revisit them, keep them active. That to me seems like the logical definition for the fullest life. But then, of course, as soon as you think that, you think, but that's not the only answer. I'm not saying everyone on earth should stop what they're doing and just make memories, but, it's really rational. So that's kind of where this whole thing started, was with that idea.
So then going through that process, arguing for each one, oh my God, live in the present. This is where it's at. Oh my God. Do you mean it's all about the future.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's about memories. Oh my, at the end of it, you alluded to mastery being 2/3, and maybe that was revealing some bias for you, but at the end of it, what did you learn from that process to actually apply to yourself?
I really liked the orchestra metaphor. The two little images at the end were important to me because the duck versus the bunny optical illusion was a little profound, because it was while I was writing the book, I came across that, and it said, is this a duck or a bunny? And you're supposed to decide, which is it, a duck or a bunny? Which is just, shallow little bit of visual entertainment. But then I went, whoa, wait, it is a duck and a bunny. I was like, I know this sounds like one of those stoner things where somebody gets high and says, really look at your hand, man. But I'm like, this is kind of feeling a little profound to me. This is a drawing of a duck and a bunny. It's not an or. It is simultaneously a duck and a bunny in the same drawing. It's like, that's like life. It's not, are we living for the present or the future? Decide. Is it not, are you a Hindu or a Muslim? Decide. You can be and. You can say, yes, I think that the Muslim doctrine of the way to live is a great way to live. I will follow this doctrine. I will pray 5 times a day. I will give this much to charity. I will do everything that, and I think that the Hindu way of life is wonderful. And so I will also do it. And it can be and. You can live for the present and the future. You can pursue money and save, not spend anything. And that felt profound to me. So I learned that while writing the book, because I just saw that silly little duck versus bunny drawing through this lens. And then, because when I started the book, I didn't know how I was going to end it, by the way. That was the only mystery to me. It was like, how am I going to end this thing? Just write a bunch of chapters and stop?
Yeah.
And so then I do go to see the symphony orchestra every now and then. And so I spent a lot of time looking at the orchestra instruments. So I was like, the different philosophies are like instruments in the orchestra. That as the composer or conductor, nobody says, well, what's the best instrument? Instead, you use the different instruments as you wish, which is kind of the answer to your question of how do you know which one to do? You acknowledge that because there's no right answer, you think of what is the effect that believing this will have on me, and what actions do I need to be taking right now? Do I need to keep my head down and focus on my work? Do I need to stop working so hard and lift my head up and smell the flowers? Do I need to, whatever, do I need to shake shit up and make, do the opposite of what I usually do? Do I need to learn something new? And depending on what you think the action you should be taking now is, well, then you choose a different outlook. You choose a worldview or a philosophy that will help you take the action you want to be taking. And so, yeah. So that's why I got the orchestra metaphor. Just like,
I love that.
You're using these instruments because it's what you need right now. I want the blaring trumpets right now. Now I want the blaring trumpets to stop, and I just want the harp to do something. Each one of those has like an equivalent philosophy.
And how do you, if I say, all right, blaring trumpet stop, give me more viola, how do I know I'm not bullshitting myself in that decision?
You are.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to do at the beginning of Useful Not True, is to say, yeah, you are bullshit. You don't actually know the real reason.
No.
The split brain page, you don't know why you're doing anything. You are lying to yourself. So what? So be it. So let's stop calling things true or authentic and just say, all right, well, what action do I want to be taking right now?
So okay, this is really good. Where Buddha will say it's the middle way, Aristotle says it's the golden mean. We have to dance in this paradox. It's being able to be okay with the tension of the paradox that we have to hold.
Mm-hmm.
Do I do more? Do I do less? Do I turn left? Do I turn right? Whatever it is. How is that being applied in your life today? Is there a paradox that you're holding the tension in now?
Huge one for me right now. The biggest mega life-size one is right now, the second most important thing in my life is to be living around the world.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about this.
The first most important thing in my life is my kid.
Yeah.
And those two things are at odds only because his mother can't move.
Yeah.
He would also like to be living around the world right now, but she doesn't. So that's my tension, is I'm sitting here on a little island in the Pacific, yearning for China, India, Dubai, Africa, wishing I was somewhere more intellectually stimulating, but knowing that ultimately that's not as important as being with my kid. So and he and I talk openly about it. I tell him about this and that I'm here actually, we're all three here because of her. Yeah.
Do you find solace in that? So for me, for example, in this, I'm defining it like I'm in this chapter of my life right now. My youngest is 2, my eldest is 11. Do you know what I mean? We're currently living like mainly in Noosa right now, but I want to be here, I want to be there, I want to be doing this, I want to be that. And I'm very much the same as like, I want to be around all of this stuff. We're saying I'm trying to make peace of it to myself by saying like, this is just the chapter I'm in. This is the season of life that I'm in. And I'm just going to enjoy and make the most of it right now.
Yeah.
And then later on, do you mean I will be doing something else? So for example, before I came on this trip, I was saying to my wife, like, what do you think of the emotions or feelings that are going to come up when our children have left the nest and gone on? And then our decision is like, I almost like dream about oh my God, okay, we've got our 4 daughters and they're all living in different places around the world, and we can go here and go there and see them and do all this other stuff. And what is it that's going to want to come up right now? And I was also saying it from the case in point of like, I want our relationship to stay strong throughout this entire process as well, because I don't want to turn around it, do you know what I mean, when they leave the nest and go, who are you? Like, we just went through how many years of parenting?
Were you quoting the Louis C.K. joke?
No.
Louis C.K., when he was kind of like first getting famous, he would talk a lot about his kids because he had like young kids.
Yes.
And one of his best jokes was, he said, oh man, he said, you have a child. And he's just like talking like this. It's like so meaningful. It's like, just look at my child. It's like, wow, like you were a part of me, like my lineage and my DNA, and like I am you and you were. He said, I look at my wife, I'm like, who the fuck are you?
There is so much truth to that. And I'm astounded that Lauren and I think this December we would be married for 13 years.
Well,
and I'm astounded that we have stayed together. Like, because there has definitely been cases like I'm a different person. She's a different woman. We've gone through these different stages. The way I've felt it is been like, almost like you start to drift apart and it's like a rubber band. We've come back together, but there has been times where it's like, is this about to snap and that's it? Like, it wasn't that long ago. It was last year. And it was very much a case of we both sat down and be like, is this just the end of our path together? And then are we just going in different places and having to work through that? It brings a lot up for me, like, I mean, emotionally trying to figure this stuff out and play those different instruments in that orchestra. And I'm like, do I not have enough over here and I'm putting too much over there? And how do I create some harmony? And how does a beautiful piece of music come out of this at the end of the day? Because ultimately that's what I want it to be.
We both admire Jason Fried. And I think when I zoom out and look at what he and David both talk about with 37 Signals, I think they're very focused on managing what they're doing to keep it sustainable, right? So it's like, we want to have 4-day work weeks. We realize that it's just like, this is all going to be more sustainable if we have 3-day weekends. I don't want to be in person. We can do things remote. We don't have to sit in meetings. And constantly saying, how can we keep this more sustainable, more balanced, keep me excited about doing this so that I don't resent it? It sounds like you're kind of doing that in the relationship too. Like, how can we keep this good? How can we, and in your own life, keeping that balance. Where am I giving too much to where I'm getting resentful?
Yes. And so even speaking of resent, and in a business example, I was walking along this morning along the waterside here, and I had a quick call with James, my chief of sales, and there was just 3 points I needed to bring up. And I was like, James, and I said to him, I was like, James, if I don't say this right now, I am worried that I'm going to have this turn into resentment. And then like after a 15, 20-minute conversation, it was miraculous. And I was sitting down, I was just like, oh my God, I just had this really grateful wave come over me of just the realization of everything. I'm going to sit down with Derek today. I'm just sitting here like, all of these great things. I'm going to go see my dad tomorrow. I've got this 10-hour layover in Sydney. And I was like, you know what? I'll just organize, see my dad. We'll go to the gym together, get some food together, go back to the airport. Then I'm flying to Bali and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this is incredible. Only when I realized that what I was actually seeking was like really simple at the end of the day. And I'm not having to go and chase after these big things. Like, I think it was this Buddhist Rinpoche, and he said something along the lines of, joy is the lack of disturbance in the mind.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I find it interesting how he then says it's really about finding the joy in where you're at. And I was like, oh, I resonated with that because I've got this one like little quote printed up. I've got a few, but one of the quotes I've got printed up in my office is from Ikkyo Sojin, which is he was a Zen Buddhist monk way back in the day. He drank, he had sex, he was the wild child of like doing Zen Buddhism. And the quote was, throw me into hell and I'll find a way to enjoy it. And I like that aspect of no matter what comes, I can be a mountain that can weather the storm around me. And I even very much think of like my household, whereas like I have these 5 other female souls in the house, and I've got this one male, and I'm the male, unmovable, and there's this feminine storm that can wail around me, but I stay unmoved the entire time. How can I then apply that to the rest of my life?
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Big time.
Because when I look at you and you've been like, I've admired you for such a long period of time. There's been so many cases in where I've went. And what I've found really interesting was coming into this trip, I was like, I'm just going to suspend all expectations. I'm suspending all expectations. Selfishly, I think there was one expectation, which was a case of, can I see under the hood for how Derek lives? Because I've said to myself, that's who I want to be when I grow up.
Next time you visit, wait, sorry, did you mean like where, like my house?
No, not even the specifics, just the vibe, the generalities. I don't need to see what kind of bed sheets you've got or anything like that. But it was the case of like, you have been a North Star for me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that it was like when people say like, never meet your heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I met you in Noosa, I was like, meet your heroes. It's the best fucking feeling you'll ever have. And that was the thing. So
hopefully.
Well, yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, because there are going to be anti-stories of that too.
That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah, I'm glad
it came true for me. So thank you.
Thank you.
And it was just the case of, no, I did have a selfish expectation coming into this. And it was wanting to be able to have oh yes, that's the direction. That's the general direction that I want to be able to head in, who I want to be, how I want to show up and what I want to do and blah, 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 blah.
I love that throw me into hell and I'll find a way to be happy idea. I'd never heard that quote, but I can relate. I love even taking that as a challenge to courageously make big changes without fear, because no matter what, even if it was the wrong choice, you go to the wrong place, knowing that you have the personal ability to make yourself happy anywhere is such security. Somebody asked me on camera last week, what's the biggest mistake in your life? But it was in the context of this kind of idea that even our biggest mistakes aren't so bad in hindsight. And so I told a story about how I really stupidly got married to a woman I hardly knew 14 years ago. And I shouldn't have. And it was a big mistake. It was truly, objectively, a bad decision. Yeah. It was made with it was made impulsively and with bad information. And it was the wrong choice. And I regret it. And still, oh, well, it's not that bad, And so it's a nice feeling that I can be sitting here talking about it with a smile.
So 2 things. One, is that the case of where we bullshit ourselves looking back into our memories and craft that story in a way to make ourselves feel better? And it's like how there's like the stories of somebody commits a crime, they go to jail for a really long time, then they say when they get out, that was the best thing that ever happened to me because of X, Y, Z.
Right.
Is that possibly a case where you're like, no, I am really happy it happened? 2.
Wait, can I answer that one first?
Go for it, please.
Quick. Yeah. Yes, it's all bullshit. But even if you were to say, it's the worst thing that ever happened to me. No, it was terrible. That's also bullshit.
So we get to narrate the way that we want to narrate.
Yeah, because it's all just one possible way of looking at it. And that's what's funny when people take themselves too seriously and they're like, no, you don't understand, dude. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me. It's like, it doesn't sound like it was so bad. Fuck you for saying that. No, it was terrible. It's like, you're really attached to this one way of looking at it. That's not the only way of looking at it. And same thing with the happy way of looking at something. That's not the only way. And I acknowledge that. I know that I could get all upset about it, but I'm choosing not to, because I find it more useful to not.
So I just remembered, I was listening to this Buddhist monk and he had a joke about sending an email but not being able to have an attachment to the email. And I really cracked up. I really enjoyed that. So the other thread, you making that decision of getting married 14 years ago, I haven't gotten the sense from you that you think things through to a beautiful level. Was she just smoking hot? Like, what happened?
She was hot, but this is going to sound crazy. After selling CD Baby, I wanted to deliberately shake my life up. I wanted to not keep doing the same winning formula. So I caught myself initially following the same path. Sold the company. Very next day, started my next company, thought about moving to San Francisco, doing the whole like Silicon Valley. I'm going to ramp this thing up. I'm going to, and then I caught myself going, whoa, wait, that would be doing the same shit I've been doing. I need to really shake shit up. And so I thought the bluntest, most obvious way to really shake shit up is to, at every point, do the opposite of what my impulses say. Every time I feel like turning left, I'll turn right. Every time I feel like going, I will stop. Feel like saying no, I'll say yes. So I did. I was in New York City, dating this hot Indian girl. We were only together for a few months, didn't even love her, liked her. In fact, but even after a few months, I broke up with her and she said, no, wait, I was like, okay, I'll have a few more dates. And then it was only a few weeks later that I said, well, hey, come to California with me. And she said, oh, I can't travel with you unless we're married. I said, what? And she said, yeah, I come from a really strict family. They wouldn't let me travel with you unless we were married. And so everything in me said, hell no. So I said, all right, let's do it. Let's get married.
Amazing.
Because it was just the opposite of my impulse. And so we did. In fact, fuck it. I even converted to Islam to please her parents so we could have a proper Muslim wedding.
Yeah.
Googled, how do I convert to Islam? It's easy. Takes 3 minutes. So I did it and it made them happy. And I'm just sitting there surrounded by like a Muslim cleric in an Indian household with a bunch of women with their heads covered going, oh, look at it. I really did shake up my life.
That's brilliant.
And here I am living in New Zealand after having a baby in Singapore, after renouncing my U.S. citizenship. That was another version of that. That was like, well, that'll keep me away from my comfort zone, So I think I just keep doing things like this. If it seems courageous, or insane, it's just coming from the place of knowing the thing we were just talking about minutes ago, that throw me into hell, I'll find a way to be happy. Whatever happens, I'm good. So yeah. Therefore, why not do the extreme thing and live a more interesting life, make memories?
And where does that confidence come from, or courage, if you want to call it that, come from you being able to do that?
I think just the decision to do it. I think that realizing you can just decide to be confident. I mean, if I were to get, if you lay me on the shrink's couch, I think it was my old boss, the circus, when I was 18, 19 years old. She just like over and over again told me really nice things about myself, which I think for the first 2 years, I thought she was just saying it to be nice. And after about 2 years, it started to sink in. I'm like, I am a pretty good person. I'm pretty cool. And I think I just decided, like, that just felt better to be confident. So I think I just adopted that stance since then. My kid, it's funny. I don't know if your girls are like this, or if do they have different levels of built-in confidence? Like my kid just feels like he was always just confident from birth.
Yeah, looking at the four of them, they're very different. And
even though you've raised them the same, they just have that.
Like their confidence in different areas is different. I'm obviously very biased. I think they're really confident. Like our nearly 3-year-old, she's hilarious how much she just thinks she just owns. Like she just goes by the beat of her offbeat drum, and really so. But then also seeing my 11-year-old now, I do see social persuasion coming into the game. Even, I think it was last week, I was chatting with her. I was like, how's the day at school? And she mentioned something about having some conflict with like her other friends, and how she didn't play with them at lunch and she just sat on the porch and read. And I was like, she had the confidence to go and be by herself and read, and know that was like, she didn't want to be around other people being bitchy and snarky and all of that kind of stuff. But then it was also the case of like, it kind of sucks thinking of my daughter having that lonely feeling as well.
Did she feel lonely?
Yeah, there was that essence of it as well. But then she was also happy that she could just sit there and read by herself. So I was just like, how do I even help as a father? Like we have to let our children. I think I asked somebody in the interview, and it was like, how do we not fuck our children up? And they're like, no, your job is to. As a parent, there isn't, and I mean, you will in some way, shape or form. So it's okay. And I didn't love that answer, because I was like, I don't want to mess my children up. The quote, like, the biggest burden a child is the unlived life of their parent. I think about that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And even before coming on this trip, I made it a point to like show them, be like, I'm going to go meet someone I really want to hang out with and I really look up to. And I want you to know that you can do this as well.
Nice.
And I was like, if there's anyone that you want to be able to see in the world, we can do that. Like, there's an unlimited budget for you for like seeing cool people and books.
Nice.
So like, know that that's possible. I kind of want to ingrain the possibility of anything, because for me, the example of having to shake shit up and the hardness that comes with that. Like, I remember really clearly when I decided to move from Sydney to Dubai, like my dad thought it was a joke until like the day before I left.
Wow.
Like, it was so so for me, it was, I'd just gotten married. We'd just bought our like second property.
How old were you?
I was 5
Okay.
at the time.
Wow.
I was running this personal training business. Like, it was going well, but I hated it. Like, I hated it. Like, I felt trapped. And for me, I saw this like white picket fence life forming in front of me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think I'm an angry person. I think there was some anger that came up inside of me, which was a case of, hang on, I've been ticking all of the boxes that society's been telling me to tick. Like, I'm doing all of the things right. Like, I'm like achieving, I feel miserable inside. Like, this feels like I'm wearing someone else's clothes, like not good. And then when that opportunity came, I was just like, done. Like, I'm all in, and I'm literally burning the ships behind me. Like, it was very much the burn the ships behind me. And then like my dad thought it was a complete joke that I was actually going to do this move. But he did say to me, if it doesn't work out, you can always come back and crash on our couch.
Nice.
And there was like that safety net.
Yeah.
There was that safety net that was there. And I knew when he said it, I was like, thank you for saying that. But I knew that my ego wouldn't let that happen. Like, I was like, no. Like, I will die on the shores over there before I have to like even swim back on a raft, however it be. And then going through those things, and I think why I'm actually proud of myself through going through that, and I want others to be able to not necessarily burn the ships, because I don't suggest that for most people, but it is to, as you said so brilliantly, to shake things up. And I find that so inspiring to hear from you saying like, you sold CD baby. Oh my God, I'm going to go build this next massive thing. Let's move to Silicon Valley and do this. And then to be able to catch yourself and go, whoa, hang on. I need to do things very differently. I'm going to change religions, get married, move around the world, do all of these things. I think that's really gnarly.
Thanks.
I think that's really gnarly. And I really would love more people to pick that up, because I take from that as well. And as we're having this conversation, I've got two voices in my head. And one of them is like, how do I use that today for myself? Where is it that I need to shake things up?
I wonder if it starts from the self-confidence you're going to be able to thrive no matter what happens. So not even worrying that anything might be the wrong choice. Because if you know you can thrive no matter what, then in a way, the wrong choice can be a good choice, because it's the one you wouldn't have ordinarily taken. It doesn't follow your usual values and ways. And so it expands your horizon. By the way, quick aside, you think a lot about home and where to live. The Rimbo, or whatever you said, the Buddhist quote about peace is something like the lack of suffering.
Disturbed mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, I got philosophical about what is home to me.
Yeah.
Home is the place with no obstacles.
Ooh.
Cool, right?
Yeah. Let me write that down. What are the typical obstacles you think people put up with that they are blind to?
I don't know about others, but I know to me, like noise, temperature, physical confinement, like if a place just feels too small for you, it's sometimes even, low ceilings or but I know in Singapore never quite felt like, it did, but didn't, because the heat and the constant noise and the constant like urban, you can't escape it unless you get on a plane and leave the country. Yeah. So Singapore did feel like home in an emotional connecting way, but I never got over that feeling of there are obstacles here, obstacles to my flourishing. I'm sitting here working and I'm listening to the noise next door from the shopping mall, or damn, I just can't go outside without being drenched in sweat every time. And these things feel like obstacles to me. And then I get to New Zealand and I go, like, wow, no obstacles. I can just thrive here. And it doesn't matter that I'm not from here. This is now home because home is the place with no obstacles. It was interesting to get philosophical and try to figure out what home really means to me. I'm not saying that's, should be other people's definitions, but like, that's what it means to me. For a lot of people, it's like, my family, my roots, my heritage.
Yeah. Yeah. Because for me, I was even reflecting on this, like you said, like heritage, family, roots, where we live now. And so we've never had family living around us. I grew up in a household where my parents, uncle, auntie, and grandparents all lived under the one roof.
Right.
Loved it. But also now it's been interesting because we're like, oh my God, like we've never had like grandparents around until only very recently, where Lauren's mum and stepdad are around the corner. And even just last week, they, all four of them had their first sleepover with the grandparents.
Wow.
And so it was like the first time in like 6 years that Lauren and I actually were just the two of us. It was like, oh my God. And what was hilarious was we went for a walk. It was really funny. We went for a walk, had a sauna, had dinner, made love, watched half a movie, and went to bed.
Half a movie. I like that.
Yeah. And it was just like, and we felt so new and afresh. So for me, it was a case of that I was looking back and I was like, oh my God, I've come from such a line of gypsies, such a line of travelers, and not having like roots in the ground. So I feel very okay with moving around. And so I actually find it interesting because it's really weird. I cannot see this ever actually happening, but like one place where I feel like at home, where it just feels like energetically, I'm like, oh, this feels like I just like am in, is Venice, California.
Okay.
And I'm just like, it's so hipster and different and like odd. And there's so many different types of people, but I love that eclectic feel. It's like that scene in Star Wars, like the A New Hope, where they're like at that bar and it's just like all different types of everybody's there. It's just an absolute collection of everything. I was like, that feels at home for me.
Nice.
And then actually thinking your definition of obstacles, I was like, oh, I actually have so little obstacles with where we're at now, but I haven't been noticing it that way. Lauren's going to hear this, and love that you said that, by the way. So
you know what's funny? You could have finished that sentence differently when you said, I come from a line of gypsies. You could have said, which is why I want so badly to just stay in one place for the rest of my life. A lot of people can take it either way. You might have heard this story, I feel like it's maybe overtold at this point, about the twin brothers that grew up with an abusive dad. And then one has spent the rest of his life in jail, like in and out of jail over and over and over again, keeps going to jail. The other one became a really successful lawyer. And both brothers, when interviewed separately by somebody who was researching, twins that go different ways, both of them said, when they were asked, like, why do you think you turned out the way you did? Both of them, unknowing that the other had said this, said essentially, well, with a dad like mine, what do you expect? So my dad was abusive. What do you expect? Of course I'm in jail. Of course I have anger management issues. I was abused. The other one said, with a dad like, of course I had to make myself a success, whatever. And I just feel that everybody does that every day. They act like it's, of course, person was mean to me. Of course I'm angry right now. Of course I have a short temper because my dad.
Okay, just a couple of weeks ago, the gym that I train at, the guy that owns it, I just don't know what it is, but I've never heard someone say something positive about this guy. He's just not fantastic. And there was this other guy at the gym, amazing guy, and he got in trouble by the guy that owns the gym for some reason. He came on and he goes, he just had a go at us about blah, blah, blah. And I just had this offhand remark and I was like, that's what happens when you don't get hugged enough as a kid. And he goes, that's so true. And for him, so I made that remark, and I don't know if this is true about the guy or not, and I'm sorry for judging, but he was like, this guy is just a prick. And the man I was talking to, he's like, that's so true. And how it goes two ways. This guy is an ex-SAS, like special service Australian soldier. And he was like, I had an alcoholic father. I saw him abuse my mum, blah, blah, blah. So he, didn't go to the path of being a prick to the world. He went to the path of being a protector and wanting to serve and help and be able to like fight for other people. And I was like, oh my God, they're so true. Like it is such a case of you can have the same situation, but very much have different outcomes from the story that somebody wants to tell of themselves.
Yeah. And it's so funny how it's told with the, of course.
Yeah.
Because this is the only way.
Dangerous words.
Yeah.
Of course.
Because it's almost fatalism, right?
Yeah.
It was destiny. It was preordained. Of course, that is the only way to react to this situation, which then takes away the autonomy of the reaction and says, no, it was, fatal. I think there's another word I'm missing here, but like fatalism, which is like, determinism, maybe that's it, where it's like, because this happened, that's why I'm doing this. It wasn't up to me. It was up to the person that did this to me.
How do you, so for example, we could say we're really successful guys. We've done great things. We've achieved amazing things. I don't feel like I can take this or ownership of all of it because I feel like there is a case of lady luck, fortune being there, the way the cookie crumbles. And so for me, I see one side of the pendulum being free will. Like, let's say a very Western American view of the world is doing, I have free will. I have the autonomy to do absolutely anything. I can be anyone that I want to be. I can do anything that I want to be able to achieve. And then on the other side, there is the case of a fatalistic philosophy of life of, well, it's just the way it is. The Muslim, do you know what I mean? God has pre-written this. It is what it is.
Yeah.
What am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
I don't agree with both of those. I'd love to know, where do you feel like you fit between that spectrum and how to handle that tension of the paradox?
Obviously, you know where I stand on that no one thing is the answer. Even with luck, I used to think things were 100% luck until a friend of mine pointed out when I was arguing about this with a friend, and he said, there's no such thing as luck. I said, bullshit. You were lucky to be born in America. And he said, see, perfect example, bullshit. Said, my grandparents left Russia, not knowing anybody, months on a ship, not knowing English, went off to a country they'd never been where they don't know anybody. Just like they suffered hard so that their kids could have a slightly better life and their grandkids could have a much better life. And now I'm the great grandchild, that I am the result of their actions 100 years ago. That wasn't luck. I went, fuck.
Good point.
Good point. But yet that doesn't negate. And so for a while, I took his argument so to heart because that's a great story.
Yeah.
That I went, wow, he's right. There's no such thing as luck. But okay, come on.
Yeah.
That's just, once again, the guy in jail, the guy in the success. It's, you can't just say, of course. There is some luck, and there is a lot of things that might look like luck that are actually the culmination of many little choices and repeatedly putting yourself into a situation where good things can happen, putting yourself out there 100 times so that you get lucky once. Is that luck? Yes and no. Yes and no answer is never as fun, isn't it? We always want to have the catchier, there is no luck, or it's all luck. It's like some yes, some no. Okay, wait. There were some open tangents we had. I was going to try to remember them all. Do you have them written down? Do you remember when you asked 3 at once? And I tried
I did. I totally did. This is one that we didn't finish actually last time. We would continue. Mastery.
Ooh. See, that was something I wanted to ask Jason about. That was a good example of, I wanted to ask him how he felt that he's taken the mastery approach or how he would do it with his kids. I meant to ask that in the interview and we got astray.
I'd love to know.
But wasn't there another one that you actually said out loud and opened just like half an hour ago?
We went from how to live, and then there was the case of how do you know what truly deserves your yes?
Right. We didn't really get onto that.
Yeah.
Well, no, okay, wait, we did. Because that was just you as the composer, conductor, what instrument do I feel like hearing right now? It's usually, for what it's worth, I often think in terms of balance of, I've been neglecting this aspect a little too long right now, or I'm feeling a lack of this. I'm often driven by this feeling of like, I don't have enough of this thing right now. Therefore, that's the way I'm steering. It's been a long time since I've really learned a new skill. Therefore, I'm going to now prioritize learning a new skill, even though you could say these other things are technically more important or objectively by some other measure. But just personally, I haven't learned a new skill in a while. So I'll choose the one that feels the most lacking that I made.
So before you said the definition of home, what would your definition of success be now?
Just achieving what you set out to do.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
think it's a little sad when people have some external definition. I'm not successful unless I have this watch and this car and this house and this amount in my bank account. It's like, oh God, what if that's not what you set out to do?
What's your definition of happiness?
Probably kind of like the lack of anguish.
Yeah.
Lack of torment in your head.
Yeah.
Seems to be the default state. Seems to me that people that are not happy have some shit in the way.
How do you declutter disturbances, declutter the shit that comes up in life so that there is less disturbance in the mind? You seem to me very undisturbed.
Yeah. Now,
like I'm trying to like through just osmosis through us hanging out. I'm like, you said now.
Because yeah, I mean, exactly 2 years ago right now, I was really tormented in my relationship. I mean, I could have been, if we would have met exactly 2 years ago, I might have been happy in the moment while leaving that behind, you know, because I'm not sitting in my living room with a sulking ex right now.
Yeah.
But God, and sorry, I don't remember if I said this 2 years ago. I'm sorry, 2 days ago, but I went back and looked at my diaries from 2 years ago. And it was really sad seeing how hard my day-to-day life was emotionally. Being in the house with somebody that was seemingly completely depressed all the time. I mean, she wouldn't smile for days at a time. She wouldn't talk for a couple of days at a time. She wouldn't even like respond to my question. She was just like sullen and curled into a ball. And so I'm like, nothing I could do about it. And then suddenly she'd be happy, you know, 4 days later and then sad again. It's like, God damn. And it was at a time when she wasn't going to work. So we were both just in the house together 24/7. I was trying to work at home, but with this energy there. And she was mad at me every day about something all the time. And it's like, fuck, it's so hard. And reading, and I sort of write this daily diary where I'm always honest. It's for my eyes only. And so I always say objectively, like what I did today, what happened today. That's something I didn't used to do, but I found useful now. And then how I felt, it was just on my mind. And damn, I remembered that it was not good, but I didn't remember it was that bad. But the result it had is making me so appreciative by comparison. Like I was saying, like the last 20 months, I'm just like, it's just been like all good since then. Like I got rid of the main source of my unhappiness, which is hard because I mean, I almost sound like I'm belittling her, but dude, it was, okay, even though technically I've been married before in my life, she was the first person that I really felt ready to marry. She's except for the sad things I'm mentioning now, she's a really good person. Like maybe like the morally one of the best people I've ever met. It's like a just through and through good person, making good life choices, a great mother. She was already a mother to my kid. He loved her. She loved him. They were close. She was a great person. I decided to spend my life with her. We got engaged. We bought a house together. We were doing IVF to have kids. But then I was just noticing how hard every single day was. And it was getting worse, not better. And I just felt our values in life. Like ultimately she just wants to be on a farm in New Zealand near her mother, tending to the garden. That's what she wants out of her life. I want fucking everything. I want to be fucking going off into China and India and throwing myself into discomfort daily and changing my mind constantly. And that was just the opposite of what she wanted out of life. So even though I loved her for who she is, it became clear that I can't do this. I've been so happy since, so much happier. Anyway, but yeah, so it's even when I do hit a situation with obstacles, okay, so that's maybe one really concrete example, but you know, my final year at CD Baby, it was kind of the same. I was like, I hate this.
Yeah.
You know, you said like you right before you went to Dubai, you're just like, I hate this.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I sold the last company was I hated it.
Yeah.
And I was crying. It was like a Tuesday or Wednesday night, 9 p.m. and I'm on the couch crying to my wife, just being like, I can't keep doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And, but like and then I kind of like rolled everything. And I was like, if there was one maxim that I could learn from this right now is I came to why I wanted to sell. And so I said this in the negotiations of the sale as well. And like, because the business was like going up. And he was like, if you hold on to this, like you'll make millions more.
Right.
And I thankfully had like spent pages of journaling to get to that point where I was like, I want to be more, not have more.
Nice.
And that was the thing that I was like, I felt okay with letting that go. And being able to then move on to the other things that I think that I wanted to move on to as well from that. But is there any way from your experiences for me or for others or for yourself to not let yourself get to a point of being on your knees crying, being like, oh God, I've gone in the wrong direction? Like, how do I pull myself up before having to be in that pain?
I don't know, maybe you need to feel the pain to know that it's really a problem, because if it's a minor annoyance, maybe it's just something that passes, or maybe it's just a minor annoyance and not something you need to make a big life change about. Maybe it needs to get to that really bad pain point to know like something you have to do. Even minimalism, to me, minimalism came from the pain of having too much shit and moving house 5 times with too much shit. Like, this sucks. Every time I'm packing up my shit every year and going to a new place. And I like moving. All this stuff, it's like the pain of having all that stuff made me look at it through a new lens, going, I really need to, this stuff has a downside. And so now I think about that a lot in life decisions, not just buying things, but buying things is a part of it. Like, a dumb, shallow example, but I'd like to try writing with a vertical computer monitor. I've been using the same horizontal one that we all use. But I thought, you know, I'm just doing text. I'm not editing videos or whatever. I'm doing text. The vertical monitor would be nice, but the current monitor I have does not do vertical. I'd have to go buy a new monitor. And even with just a couple $100, I was just like, another thing. And so I've picked out the one I want to buy. My finger was kind of hovering above that button. And I was just like, it's another fucking thing, isn't it? Another thing holding me in a place. And I saved the URL in a file. I don't even keep tabs open. Instead, I copy the URL to a text file that I keep somewhere with it, some descriptive words underneath it. Yeah. So if I ever want to find that link again, I can find it. And then I close it. And, I was like, there, okay. I didn't buy the thing. I got tempted to get a new bicycle. I have a bicycle that's kind of more like a mountain bike. And I was like, oh, I kind of miss having a road bike. And again, I was like, oh, maybe I was like, it's another fucking thing, isn't it?
Is it coming from a place of not wanting to be held down in one place?
Yeah.
Because that's the feeling for me. I love the feeling that I can literally jump on a plane and be anywhere and everything is.
Which you still could do if you had another bicycle, but yet it's also the joy of, I got to dive into this better. I don't mean right now. I mean, like, in my own thoughts, I need to like ponder this a little more deeply. What is the joy I get from my computer every few months and reinstalling the operating system from scratch? What is it? And I just did that with my phone last week too. What is that joy that I just I wiped the whole thing, reinstalled the whole, and I was up and running within 40 minutes. And that was some kind of joy. And I think it's related to camping, like backpacking, this confidence of knowing that just this backpack on my back, I got everything I need to survive in the wilderness for a week. It's a self-sufficient confidence. So minimalism is related to that to me. It's like looking around going all I have are a few pieces of clothing, one bed, a table, like a $20 IKEA table is my desk, and I'm good. And I can thrive. I can flourish. I've got no obstacles. There's nothing holding me back from being the maximum I can be, the best I can be, just with this stuff here. And it's I don't need the second bicycle. I don't need the vertical monitor. I don't need some other piece of clothing. This is it. I can thrive with this. And there's some joy about living in a place that has so little as a constant reminder that I need so little, which feels like.
I found that really difficult on the flip side from living in Bali for 9 years where you just can't get stuff. And it was so good. Then moving to Australia and being able to get anything delivered at the snap of the fingers, I went through this, oh my God, I can get everything. And then I was like, oh my God, no. And then just went through this massive purge of just giving out all this stuff away. Yeah. And I was like, oh, it was actually really nice not being able to get anything delivered and being able to buy that stuff. It's slightly changed now, but.
When I first moved to Singapore in 2010, at the time, I felt when people said, do you miss anything about America? I said Amazon.
Yeah.
I miss being able to click anything and have it show up 2 days later. And then now it's laughable to me that I felt that way, but it was the habit at the time. It was like somebody moving to a Muslim country going, I miss being able to get a drink.
Yeah.
And it's after a couple of years, you're not used to getting a drink anymore. So and same in New Zealand, things are just really expensive. In America, you have not just Amazon, but Walmart and all that. There are always ways to get cheap things because it's the world's biggest market.
Yeah.
everything is as cheap as can be. It's like, it's almost wholesale. Whereas here in New Zealand, everything is like double the price. You know, just a shirt, a book, everything costs twice what it seems like it should to me. And it made me break my consumer habit.
And it was for me. I haven't drank a drop of alcohol in 11 years now, and it started from being in Dubai.
Oh, wow.
But I was just like, and I just kind of got to the point of just like, don't want this anymore.
Was it a problem before that?
It was never a problem.
Oh, okay.
And it was like, yeah, I could drink like a fish, and I'm not super proud of that. But I just remember just one day just like, I'm just not interested in this anymore. And I think it was very much being in that surrounding anyway, where I was just like, like it very much helped the beginning of that identity choice for me for that one as well. So we've spoken about Jason. We both admired him. And so for me, I think of like admiration and the people that I admire in my life. And I was thinking, why do I admire them? Like, what are the characteristics, and like, what's the thing that's essentially pulling me towards that person? And for me, there's been like a couple of themes where I really look towards, like simplicity, mastery, and especially like mastery for the way they have wanted to do the things that they've wanted to do it. But also for me, a big case has been like what I just like label like a multi-dimensional man. So somebody that's good, great, and has, let's say, all of the plates spinning in their life, like the important plates of their spinning.
Interesting.
So like, yes, they're financially well off, physically well off, emotionally well off. They're a good father. Like they have good social circle. They're well spoken. They're kind to other people. All of these different facets. And I'm going to say something. I've never said this publicly, so it's actually quite embarrassing for me to say this with my hubris. But anyway, and I came to this point where I was like, I want to be the guy that has it all. Someone has to be him. So I've decided that's going to be me. And so for me, when it comes to admiration, what are the characteristics that you look to in admiration? Who do you admire and why?
Erica LeMay comes to mind first. Instead of getting too stuck on one, let me think of some others.
Who's the third?
Touche. I can't even think of the second right now. I mean, Seth Godin, Tyler Cowen. Yeah, I'll just stop with those three for now.
Why was Erica first?
Did we talk about her 2 days ago? I don't remember.
No.
I met her a few years ago. We got really close for a while. She is this amazing, award-winning, you could say acrobat to oversimplify it, or aerial artist, or contortionist, or whatever. We did talk about her.
We did. Sorry.
I thought so,
Yes.
So she was careful, and I mean that word in like, literally full of care.
Like conscious the way she does things.
Yeah. Everything. Just full of care in everything she does. Cares about herself, cares about her health, cares about her art, cares about her relationships, cares about her time, and just really walks the walk with all of that. Like just everything, just so deliberate in her life and intentional, very controlled in a good way. But even that, like, even if you could say, oh, it sounds like she might be too controlled. No, even that, she cared enough to not let herself get too controlled. There was this beautiful moment where we were both staying in a hotel in Lisbon, different rooms, but I like went to go knock on her room, and suddenly there was a big like against the door, like a body being flung against the door. And then she opened it laughing. So what was that? She said, I just felt like flinging myself against the door. I was like, it's amazing. It's like coming from her, where she's like, imagine what it would be. Imagine how uncomfortable it would be to have tea with the Queen of England, when she was alive. Somebody that's so refined, and every movement and every gesture and every word is very thought out, and it's almost unnerving.
Yeah.
Somebody that, so Erica's almost like that. So for her to fling herself against the door, like, even that was beautiful. Like just the right amount of not letting things get too far, like having a little bit of chaos. And like, so I think she's still a huge role model to me. I often think like, what would Erica do? Tyler Cowen has a podcast called Conversations with Tyler. And he's such a wide or broad thinker total info whore, right? There's some word for it. No, sorry, infovore, sorry. Slight difference. Infovore. And then I said Seth Godin, who we talked about last time. I was like being thoughtful and principle-based and whatever. But I don't know if Erica, the reason she came to mind first is, to me, it's like maybe because I know her so well. I don't know Tyler Cowen. I know Seth Godin a little bit. I don't know their lives fully. I mean, shit, I could have put other people on that list like Tim Ferriss. But all these people, I feel like I like some aspect of what they do. I can say I'd like to take this from Seth and this from Tyler.
Yes.
And maybe Erica came to mind first because it's like, well, everything.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think?
I see you embodying a lot of what you say you admire in the others, which I think is very coherent and congruent.
Thanks.
Which I admire. Like congruency, coherence, integrity, those things I admire in another human being, in another man. And I want that to come out from you and seep into me in any way, shape or form, or like get into my pores.
Yeah.
Have you subscribed? If not, this is the best time for you to subscribe, whether you're on the YouTube or on the podcast. Why? Because it would be a bummer if you missed out on everything that's to come, or don't subscribe if you're not actually getting much value out of this, because there is a zillion other things that you could be doing. So I'd rather you go and do that.
And that's what I feel like for a few months, Eric and I talked a lot. And I'm really thankful for that time, because I do feel like she's in here now. She's in my head. I like that.
Why Tim?
He's fucking balls out on everything he does. Like he wants to like master everything. So there's just some little side story where he went to go play basketball with some dude named Jason in New York City. He was like an investor, and he was just like, yeah, let's go shoot some hoops, man. And it was in minutes, like Tim's like analyzing the moves and the pivoting, how do you correctly pivot the ankle to get the best so-and-so. And he said, even though Tim had never shot hoops before, within 5 minutes, he's out shooting and it's like, that's, I was watching Tim in action learn. And so part of me is just like, oh man, it sounds exhausting. Like, I don't want to master everything. I don't care that much. But then I admire that he does, that he looks at every opportunity, like, how can I use everything I've learned to master this skill quickly? But then I wouldn't want the choices he's made about fame, for example.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be that famous. Then I look at somebody like Tony Robbins, who I admired a lot for a long, long time and still do, but I also wouldn't want to make his choices around money and stuff, mansions and cars and helicopters and all that,
How do you play with fame and notoriety and just people knowing you? Because I have thought of this a lot, and it was especially when I sold the last business, and then all the social media platforms went with it as well. And I was like, I very much toyed, do I do Daft Punk? Do you know what I mean? Like I literally was actually Googling and go to buy a helmet and be like, yeah, I can shoot content and do stuff and do and not actually be seen. Do I do full suit, or do I do it? Do you mean it's me? But if I play this out, and if I'm good at what I do and I continue on that path, then there is a sense of notoriety and stuff like that. And even previously in my own very small world of the fitness world, I'd walk into a gym somewhere and they'd be like, oh, Chris. And I'd be like, oh, okay. You've seen some content or one of my ads or something along those lines. How do you...
Did that feel good to you, or is that scary?
He had very positive things to say. So it was very nice. And he gave me external validation that plays with my ego for sure. But Kim has been public about the downsides of it. And I think that's brilliant of him to share that as well, because when somebody's wanting to walk this path and be a public persona, there is a negative to that as well. And even very much myself. And what I've noticed with you that I respect highly, you've never said your son's name.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if you consciously do that or not, but I picked that up and I was like, I know, I am assuming that he's not doing that because of doing privacy, secrecy. He's looking after his son. And I shot an ad just before coming here, and I had a bit of a play. So I had my daughter speak these lines, and there was something along the lines of we made a little story. And it was really fun because she got to act it out and everything like that. But her camera was never like, her face was never on camera. And even the B-roll that we use, none of my children's faces are there on camera. And so I have been toying with this a lot, if to be perfectly honest. And if I could be real, I have been half-arsing this and wanting to go out. Like, having these conversations is one of the most joyous things that I do, right above seeing my children getting bored. Like, I get a lot of kicks out of it, but I know I have been half-arsing this because I have not decided in my head, do I want to truly put myself out there?
Okay. In 2008, I sold CD Baby at a time when I had 85 employees that were mostly directly reporting to me, and they were really unhappy. And so I was very unhappy with that amount of emotional burden put on me. And so when I sold the company, I wanted to disappear. I looked into legally changing my name. I read 2 different books about how to legally disappear. I just go off, cut all ties, change your name, go to a new place, and how to disappear. Because I just felt like, fuck you world, leave me alone. And I was pursuing that path for at least 6 months. I was, following the steps. Even had an anonymous bank account. Basically, I found an old friend who's very kind of off the grid himself. And he went to a state where he doesn't live and went to a bank that he doesn't bank with and opened an account there and with cash, and then gave me that card. So now that was my card and like a friend's name. And so I used an anonymous bank account like that for a while, and just for expenses, not income. It wasn't hiding income, but still it was just like my way of like, getting off the grid, getting off the, no, not off the grid. It was just, anyway, but all of it was coming from the desire to be invisible. And then I was reading that book, The 48 Laws of Power
by Robert Greene.
Yeah. Or it might have even been the seduction follow-up one he wrote. But at some point in there, he told the story of Benjamin Disraeli becoming prime minister through these channels. And he said something about courting power. And something just clicked in my head where I realized I like being able to call on somebody and have them take my call, and being somebody that important, talented people feel it is worth their time, that I can meet with almost anybody I want to. Not people I don't want to.
Yeah.
If there's somebody that I really want to meet, I can probably make it happen because I'm known.
Yeah.
I realized that is really nice. And so in that moment, just sitting in an airplane seat while reading that book, I went, I don't want to be invisible. I don't want to legally change my name and be nobody. I like being well known. So it's just a matter of deciding what balance you wanted. So it was actually, that's the moment where I decided I wanted to lean into it a little more, in fact. It's like, as long as I can deal with the occasional downside, the plus sides are worth it. So that's why I was like, I want to be a TED speaker. Because at the time I was watching a lot of TED Talks. It's like, I do that. I want to be known for my thoughts. That was my decision to lean into it, was related to this fame invisibility thing.
And how do you manage that today? So for example, you don't say your son's name. I love that. What else? What are the rules or boundaries that you have upon yourself?
I just don't pursue massive exposure. I like my being kind of low key. I do my books. I'm not pursuing a TV show. I'm not trying to constantly put myself into, I'm not on social media. It's a huge one. Just I'm not like every day doing a TikTok and, like trying to get, smash that like button. That would be such a different thing, right? Could you imagine?
Do
like
that
that's
really
like,
well.
that's constantly pursuing that, look at me, look at me, look at me. So because I don't pursue that, I don't get much of it, which is fine. I think I'm managing the amount I want.
You know what I loved? And if there was like one of a couple of us, when you had your podcast and it was simply you getting interviewed on other people's shows, I was like, one, this is genius. But two, it was so nice to be able to have that and to see, to be able to have that little in and to be able to have I can just listen to the conversations Derek is having. And so for example, I remember like the only things that we'll ever watch on TV would be like documentaries or like stand-up comedy. And I remember one night, Lauren and I were watching Jerry Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars.
Getting coffee. With who?
We were like,
in general.
Yeah, we're just watching it.
I love that show.
But I had this massive epiphany. Like I'm like I throw myself in the back of the chair and I'm like, oh my God, Lauren, this is the most genius thing that I've ever done. I've ever seen. He is just doing what he wants to do. He's a comedian and he wants to talk with other great people and banter. He loves cars, so he gets to drive around in these cool cars, and he loves that people are going to give him for the day to hoon around. And he loves drinking coffee. And it's like I pierced through this veil and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And I'm telling Lauren, and she didn't really care much for my epiphany at the time. And she was like, well, what would yours be? And I was like, oh, it'd be philosophers on mushrooms going for a walk.
Nice.
Just the kind of tongue in cheek. And so I think about for myself, I'm being extremely selfish right now, but I think about for myself the case of, okay, what is it that I want to be doing, and how is it that with the obstacles, home, no obstacles, how is the work and what I do have no obstacles? And essentially, like, so for example, somebody might ask for a business question, you go like, who is my target market? Who is my niche? And with many of the time recently, I said, well, you are the niche. You do you. You be you. I think Jason actually might have said that. I think I might have stolen that from Jason. But anyway, someone said...
By that, do you mean just please yourself first?
Yeah,
make yourself the
correct.
Okay.
Correct. So like, what is it that you want to do? What's the life that you want to be doing? And so what would your version of philosophers on mushrooms going for a walk be?
It would be getting into in-depth conversations with people from radically different cultures, radically different demographics. Like, I would really like to, maybe even I would need a translator to do this really well. Because even if I just only talk with people that have learned English, I'm speaking with the 1%, you know. But when I think of, God, can you imagine being in Western, not just China, Western China, in, Northwest China or Kyrgyzstan or, Ghana or Mozambique, and the conversations you could be having with people that have never left their village in northern Mexico or something like that. And to have an in-depth conversation and get to know them, not expecting them to even philosophize and give you gems, but just what you would learn from their worldview, their different way of seeing the world.
What would you want to ask them? Well, if there was one question, you'd be like, I'm going to have this question as my thing.
Oh, no, I don't. No, I don't. And in fact, I don't like when other people do it.
Yeah.
People have you on their podcast. They're like, here's the one question I ask everybody. Yeah. I'm always thinking, oh, great. How special of you. But no, because it'd just be, nice to meet you. What's on your mind? I like to just leave it open to see what they're thinking about. I don't want to project like, here's what I'm here to get from you. But instead, I just want to get to know their way of seeing the world, This walk that I'm doing in England in 4 weeks, Kevin Kelly started doing this a few years ago called Walk and Talk, where he just gets together a handful of friends. We'll go somewhere new. We'll go walk. He invited me to go on it, which is wonderful, except we were all the same demographic. It was all liberal California.
White dudes.
Yeah. In fact, apparently until the walk I went on, it had literally only been white dudes for the previous 9 walks.
Yeah.
Literally no women, nobody non-white. And so they deliberately invited 3 women on the walk I was on, but still everybody was basically white. And almost everybody was just, if not from California, then, beliefs wise they were. So just a few things came up in conversation and just everybody agreed. And I was like, It's like, if I were to do this walk and talk, I think I'd set a racial quota, no more than 2 people of any given race and gender.
Yeah.
No more than 2 white guys, and I'm already one. So that would mean only one more. Everybody else has to be different backgrounds, different cultures, different genders.
And what's the friction that you want to see? Do you mean what's the rubbing up that we want to be able to?
The thing that I want organically to get the thing that I do very consciously and deliberately, which is what's another way of looking at this? Yeah. It's even if you bring up obligations or whatever, you can have the individualist American California way of looking at obligations. And then you can have the Chinese typical way of looking at obligations, or the Indian way, or even somebody from France that's trying to uphold their traditions of their culture's way of things. And I want to hear from people that one in themselves would probably say, well, of course you have to uphold the traditions. They're not trying to be lateral thinkers. They're not trying to present a different point of view. They just have a deep foundation of having grown up in a culture that believes such and such. And I would just love to hear more of that in any given subject, even if we're talking about, I don't know, pick something else we talked about an hour ago, what does home mean to you? Yeah, that's a fun one to hear from a lot of different points of view, and not just somebody that's read the same books as me.
Yeah.
But yeah, language is a tough one there, because to get really diverse, you'd want to get with people that don't speak English and therefore haven't read all these same books or blogs or watched the same YouTube videos. It is kind of cool about China that China doesn't have Google or YouTube or Instagram or whatever. And so it's just by default taking in different media. That's cool.
Because I was thinking last night on the case of like us, we've all pretty much read the same books. We've all listened to the same people, especially with podcasts. Recently with myself, I haven't loved diving into many of them simply because it kind of sounded like they were all regurgitating each other. And I was like, okay, it's great information and it's true for what it is, but it was like the diversity just wasn't there. And it was getting a bit bland and boring and beige is not great.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I've been recently trying to think of like, well, where do I go to get my information that can be different?
Mm-hmm.
What do I do differently so that I can have a different perspective? How can I be multi-perspectival to look at a situation in different ways to come up with a different conclusion, or at least have a firmer decision on what that conclusion is, because I've been able to look at it from different perspectives as well.
Yeah.
How do you think I go about that?
Conversations with Tyler Hill. Know it?
No, I have not listened. I wrote it down.
You did? Okay, yeah. Check out that podcast. That's what I like about his podcast, is because he's so broad, he's able to sit down and talk Russian ballet with one person and the vegetables of Western India with another person and Soviet economics with the next person, and get to listen in to all these conversations. And usually it's like half of it's going over your head, but that's what's fun. Is you're getting to hear these points of view that you ordinarily wouldn't hear. And it's because he's seeking out a wide variety of thinkers. So it was because of him that, he had a long interview with the first woman to publish a translation of the Odyssey, the story of Odysseus, the ancient Greek tale by Homer. And he talked with her for 2 hours about translation. It was about meter and about the things that go into making a good translation and how to rethink something that's been translated 20 times already. How contemporary to make things or not. And I never had an interest in reading the Odyssey before, but after an interview with her, I was like, I want to read her translation of the Odyssey. So I bought her book and I got the audio version and listened to it during lockdown, when we were all like just walking around. So yeah, I never would have had that otherwise. There's some books I never would have found if it weren't for his conversation. That's a good start.
Have you found a solution for translation for your own book?
We'll see if it works. I have a plan, which is basically AI does the first round, because a few different translators told me that all professional translators now use AI for the first round themselves anyway. Even if you hire them to translate something from scratch, they're using an AI and then improving it, because it takes the obvious ones out of the way. It's like the obvious translations. Where it requires no artistry. So I figure, well, I might as well do that first anyway. So I'll do the first round. Then now everybody that comes in is going to improving it. So then it's a matter of how much will they improve it? Will they be somebody just generally like a passive reader that's going to say like, that feels wrong to me, just flag it? Or is it somebody that's going to go, all right, here's how I can make that sentence better, Or is it somebody who's going to look at, like an editor who's going to look at the whole book and say like, okay, this translator suggested this improvement, this reviewer flagged this, look at all of this, and I'm going to help put together the final definitive translation. So that's the plan. And at some point, even then, after an editor has made the final definitive translation, then have a few more readers read it, tell me if it really flows well and feels right. Does it sound like my voice before I consider it done?
Because I remember when you had sent that email about the translation and you solving this, I was thinking after that, let's continue to use How to Live as an example. You've done so much work for this, and there's a feeling like you this is the way I'm saying it, so please correct me wherever I'm wrong. As an author, as a creator, there is something inside of you that you're wanting to pass on to somebody else. You're like, here is where I'm feeling, here's what I'm getting the sense of, or whatever, and you're trying to pass this to somebody else. And we're using words, and the poverty of our language is going to dictate, and especially the framing or the lens in which somebody's viewing the world and perceiving it is going to change the message that they take on board from that. And then you add in the technicality of a translator, changing the language in between that as well. To me, it's like, oh my God, this turns into a Chinese whispers real quick. How do you ensure that the essence of what you have created gets passed on through that?
I think just a lot of reviewers. I think bilingual people, native speakers that speak English, that know my English writing, and then they can tell me like, ooh, no, you know. So I've done this a bunch where I'd have some people translate even just a little bit. I translate one of my articles, and then I send it around to like 5 different native speakers. One will say, yeah, pretty good. And another one will like, whoever did this is going for a little more artistic, common phrases, you know, the kind that, you know, they're using a little more cliches than I know that you use in English. This person took too many liberties. This one is following your English word for word, which in our language sounds a little unnatural. Yeah. And they get really wonderfully critical. And so, yeah, that asking many people to review it has helped a lot. Still, I mean, I can't say that I've successfully done it yet. So we'll see. To me, it would be a very good feeling to, especially for the top 4 languages, say like Chinese, Spanish, Portuguese, probably French. Wait, was French the 4th? Anyway, whatever it is, Chinese, Spanish, Portuguese. For those most important, most popular languages, especially Chinese and Spanish, to make sure it's so good that multiple people have told me that's a great translation, even if it costs me, $10,000 to get there. So I can finally say this is the definitive, I feel happy giving this to anybody in China. And then also I can repurpose those sentences because I have all of this stored in a database. It's not just like I have like a Word file that's 200 pages. I've got every sentence stored with the English original and now the translation in Chinese or Spanish. I can do things like make, whether it's Instagram-y, TikTok-y kind of, I can repurpose these and make things in that language and share it on social media to spread it. That gets exciting. I don't personally want to spend my time on social media, but as a method that somebody else in that country could use to spread it, I'm all for it.
What's Derek's philosophy for selling his books?
I'm really just trying to reach my existing fans who would rather lay on the couch and read a book instead of clicking on their screen a thing at a time. I really only make the books for them.
Is that also why there's the positive friction? Like, let's say, like the way you haven't put the books on Amazon, for example, right? So it's almost like adding in that friction determines the quality of the reader on the other side.
Yeah, like that was my main, since we were talking about fame earlier, that was my main, I teased Tim Ferriss about this. Like, dude, you pursued a TV show.
Yeah.
TV. Who the fuck watches TV? Do you want those people? Like, to me, that was like, I draw the snob line there. Like, I don't want TV watchers to be my fans, you know?
Yeah.
And so I like this idea of like my books without marketing crap on the cover.
Yeah.
Hey, this is gonna, make you, instead of that, like, no, I'm just gonna do this plain, boring, useful, not true. Derek Sivers. Here. If you want to read this, it's kind of badass, and I'm not going to try to convince you to read it. I like that natural. Yeah, you said friction. I hadn't thought about it that way before, but yeah, it's introducing a little friction because I'm not trying to win new fans.
Which for me, the way I saw it was the friction helps increase the quality of the end customer, user, reader.
Yeah. Like somebody we were talking about, master craftsman, it's like
Michael Brown is making these suits,
right?
Because, and it's only, you said it's only referral only.
Yeah. And so whether it's like that, like, oh, well, I did cold email him first and he never replied. It wasn't until I got the referral that so yeah, maybe that's like an obstacle. Maybe it's price. Maybe it's a 2-year waiting list or whatever it may be. Yeah. But that's where it's like, if you're worried about becoming too famous, it's easy to slow that down,
Yes.
You can always, it was sad to me when Kurt Cobain killed himself and he blamed too much fame. I think you could have slowed that down, dude. Yeah. You could have get a dorky haircut and show up in Des Moines, Iowa to work at Burger King, take the job. And if somebody says you look like Kurt Cobain, you just go, huh?
I think I remember somebody quoting Ice Cube and of recent, and it was something like along the lines of, if you stopped producing content or if you stopped putting yourself out into the world will forget you very quickly.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like the news cycle now is just constantly rhythm and rhyming.
Yeah.
If you stop yourself, like you'll become a nobody pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Like I think it's, yeah. Okay. That's good.
Yeah, to me, it's no fear of that. You have to really try hard to get famous. So, yeah, it's easy to dial it back.
Mm.
And then it's also easy to manage. I think it's pretty easy to manage other people's expectations. You can always just turn off your, like anytime something mine gets posted publicly, like YouTube or whatever,
Yeah.
I never look at the comments because I just truly, deeply don't care. I don't care what anybody has to say about that YouTube video. I do check my inbox. And again, because that's somebody that's gone to the trouble of emailing me. So that I'll read every email. But even then, if somebody's really upset at me about something and says, I wish you would have something, or I think you're full of shit, you're wrong, I'll go, thanks for your thing. Send, delete, I don't let it get to me that much.
I'm just going to keep opening holes right now. This is something I've been thinking of upon myself recently, and I'm not going to let the truth get in the way of a good story, but it was said that when dying, the last sense to go is hearing. And so the question I posed myself was like, what is the last thing I want to hear? What would be the last thing you want to hear?
At this point, I'm thinking my kid. That's definitely, he has been the love of my life. It's so interesting to think that usually we think of that term romantically. So I just thought about it a little objectively. Like, oh, no content. I've never had that one person, like you've got Lauren. I've never had like one person that stayed beyond, say, 6 years that I felt really deep with. But yeah, him, like no contest. I've never spent as much time with another human being as I have with him. I've never, cared so much about somebody else's well-being. I've cared about other people, but not that much. So it's, no contest. He's definitely the love of my life. And it looks like I probably will not be having any more kids. So that's it. How about you?
Yeah, for me, it was the laughter of my children.
Laughing on your deathbed.
I think that would be pretty funny.
What an idiot. He thought he could jump that bridge. Oh shit, I think he's faint.
Yeah, voices. I want them to be celebrating a life well lived rather than doing mourning and being sad or anything like that. And I obviously would never want them to be sad. And it's just...
It does sound like there was a good stand-up joke in there.
There's definitely something
the final
in there
sound I hear is the laughter of my children.
Yeah, the chuckles of them. Thank God he's gone.
The stuffing of my children, yeah.
Okay, selfish question. When you look at me, you said on Monday, you don't like putting the coaching hat on. So don't think of this as the coaching hat going on. But when you look at me, what do you think I could be doing better? Or what do you think is the path that I should be leading down?
Ooh, you don't seem to care to hear this, but I was really impressed when I met you in his son. You're also, to me, living according to the values that you say you admire. You seem to be an extremely well-rounded dude that balancing the intellectual, the physical, and the emotional balancing the keeping your own boundaries, but being there for others. Even just seeing the way that you were at that event, the things that I watched you kind of do for others at that event and being present with your listening and learning. I think a lot of people that get where you got could become more talker, do more talking than listening. It seems like you still, granted I'm biased right now because of this situation where I'm just letting you pick my brain. This actually feels a little weird to me. I would rather be having a 50-50 conversation, but on the other hand, I know that I'm here to serve,
Yeah. Well, I say math doesn't lie. We've been given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So use it that way.
Well, see, even, you walk that, anybody can parrot that quip, but you embody it. So the reason I'm here spending 6 hours over 2 days with you is because I was really impressed meeting you. So I think you're already, I don't have much to suggest. We could nerd out about writing where I felt that the Dave Chappelle piece I felt could have been 6 smaller pieces with individual points that would have been more memorable. Because once he got 80% down, it's kind of like, ooh, there's some good stuff here, but only for the few people that make it 80% of the way into this longer article. But that's also, my writing style, so you can tell that I'm a little bit just projecting.
No, it's great.
My style, but part of that has come from experience where I found that if you take more than a page to say something, a lot of people won't read it.
Yeah.
A lot of people won't read more than 1 page. Yeah. They just don't. And so a lot of my super short 20-sentence chapters are because it seems to be the only way that I can get people to get the point. is to keep them really damn short. Obviously, there are some people that can handle long books. There's just so many that can't. I don't know, one of my favorite moments of talking 2 days ago was you realizing what seemed obvious to me, that these are not two different things, the money versus the philosophical, intellectual, holistic approach to life. That it was weird to see you say like, oh, is it this or is it that? Like, dude, that's the same thing.
I skipped back to the Airbnb because of that one. That was
really cool to see you
I was so blind to it. And it was so like, oh my God, like I was so not seeing that. Yeah. So thank you for saying that. I journaled a lot on that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So sorry, that's all I got.
No, I appreciate that so much.
Which is funny, isn't it? When like, if let's say any like creative works, like if somebody, let's just say like a song, if somebody sends me a bad song, it says, what do you think? Oh, I've got a lot to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, where do we begin?
Yeah.
If somebody sends you a good song and you listen, you go, well, yeah, thumbs up. Nothing to add. That's great. So yeah, I had that way about you.
Thank you.
You're a great song, dude.
I appreciate that. I ask that because my perspective is like, I can't see what's behind me.
Right.
And the only way I think I can know what's behind me is because you can actually see what's behind me.
Right.
And so I want to be able to ask the right people, yo, what do you think's behind me? Like, well, what am I not doing? How can I improve myself? Where should I be going that I think I shouldn't be going, or whatever the case is? And I think that feedback for me is really important. And I think especially this kind of like chapter right now where I'm very much like I would be very interested having this a timestamp of life before this hang with Derek and life after this hang with Derek, because as I said, the kind of like the one selfish kind of expectation coming into this was can I get clarity on where do I want to go from here? And who do I want to be? And the interesting part that has been just like banging between my ears these last few days was, you knew what you wanted to do, Chris. You just didn't have the balls and the cojones to actually just be like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, yes, I want to write more. Like, yes, I want to be having more conversations and like, and broadening out where you have very thankfully opened my eyes.
I didn't think that was about balls. I think that was you to please others. You've said that.
Yeah.
But that's an important value to you. And I think you were feeling that pursuing, say, conversations like these was selfish and not helping others. Whereas I don't think that was balls. I think it was, you hadn't connected that, like the guy, you said the old guy calling you, that whereas clearly his life was a mess, but he thought he was calling you for more money. Or even just your insight that people don't want to show the book cover about, how to not be a loser. But that's the book they should be reading. How you can get more successful by first dealing with your shit. Yeah, that was a really good insight. I hadn't thought about that ever either. People are okay with admitting they want to make more money, but not okay with admitting they want to stop feeling like a loser or want to figure out their love life. Or like you said, that tiny penis.
Yeah. I'm not showing that book around. And because I think of like, dude, I was overweight. I figured out how to get in shape. That's a book cover that we can show to the world.
Right.
Ran a crappy business, learned how to run a good business. That's a book cover that there's many book covers on we go to the bookstore that are going to be in that genre. And then kind of my idea in I've had suicidal ideation throughout my life. I've had 2 depressive episodes in my life. I very much have felt like somebody that I did not love myself, and being able to get to a point where I was like, yeah, actually I do love myself. And I'm wanting to strive. If someone would ask me, like, who do you admire? I want to say I admire myself.
Yep.
I want to get to that point. Sorry, go, please.
Oh, no, I've got a great story. One of these days, in fact, could you write down Jodie Cook, Jodie space COOK. Jodie Cook, you should meet her someday. You guys are quite kindreds. And she's actually a great powerlifter. She's one of like the top powerlifters in the UK. But also ran a successful PR agency in the UK and then sold it. And then now travels the world with her husband, living nomadically, staying near a good gym while building a new, it's called Coach Fox, like an AI coaching business. And you guys are even very similar, just kind of in disposition, temperament. It's funny, a side effect of being a writer, I work harder to find the right word.
Yeah.
I didn't used to do that. Now I notice that even in conversation, like, you have the right. I'm like, I think before I would have said, you guys have that thing.
I love that presence. Yeah.
And now I'm just like, you have that temperament. That's the word I wanted. Okay. And she said that one of her favorite ideas that she thinks of a lot is the magic mirror from the Harry Potter movie. Do you remember the first Harry Potter movie where Harry looks in the mirror and he sees his parents? Dumbledore looks in that mirror and sees his old friend. Ron looks in that mirror and sees him as the captain of the Quidditch team. And I mentioned this mirror to her because I used it as in the Useful Not True book. I was just reading Jodie the chapter and she goes, oh, the mirror of Ezerod. I was like, what? You know that? And she's like, oh yeah, I think about that all the time. She said, because if you read the book, the original idea is the mirror shows you your greatest desire. So therefore, a way to live is to constantly be who you want to be so much that eventually you see your true reflection in the mirror. So that when you look in the mirror, it's actually showing you who you are because you are your living the life, being who you want to be and living the life you want. Like, that was deeper. That did not come across in the movie. So Jodie said that that's something she thinks about every day or every week is that mirror. And am I being who I want to be so I can look in the mirror and admire myself? And wow.
When you say that, I also think of Buddha said enlightenment is unavoidable when compassion and presence have arisen. I think there's might have butchered it, but anyway, what I took from it was back in the case was I was like, oh, that's a statement to make. Enlightenment, something very grand that a lot of people want to have. Here's the recipe for it, black and white, and where it's not this philosophical musings. It's like, no, it's here. Do you know what I mean? Compassion and presence. And I think I might have gotten presence incorrect, but here's the recipe to attain this thing. When I read, I was like, oh, interesting. In a business context, what is the prescription for somebody to have success unavoidable? Which means essentially you just have to continue to move down that path and it will eventually happen. Time's the thing that we don't really control.
Ooh, I love this subject.
But it's
that's right. We haven't talked about mastery yet.
No. And so I was like, okay. So I thought about it in a business context first. I was like, okay, well, what's the recipe so that when this has arisen, that enlightenment, success is unavoidable. You will get there. You just need to continue on this path. I then looked at it through the context of, for me, I think I'm like optimizing in life, not for happiness. I don't love the word happiness. I don't feel like it's something palpable that I can really grasp onto. For me, it's like peace or equanimity feels more like, that feels like the thing that I'm wanting. And so I was like, well, what's the recipe? What are the ingredients and process for peace to be unavoidable? When you say the mirror, I'm like, oh, okay, it is showing me who I have to be so that it becomes unavoidable for me to get to this place. So therefore, how does Derek perceive ingredients, his process, his equation for what you want to be unavoidable?
This is okay.
Sorry,
To be continued. I love this subject. This is how I am all day long. I just drink a ton of liquid all day long. Usually just water, tea, toilet every 30 minutes. God, that is such a fun subject because there are different aspects, right? You could say somebody like an 18-year-old that wants to be a rich entrepreneur, doesn't even have a business idea yet, but wants to start a business, doesn't know what is the recipe where success will be basically unavoidable for that. But then somebody else could say, I want tranquility. And what is the recipe for that? And for me, it's like, at least it seems like my personal mission or my version of success pursuit is that constant self-expansion of learning other ways, inhabiting philosophies. That's my favorite two-word way of saying it. I want to inhabit philosophy deeply. Like I want to learn the language, be in it, live that way of living. Even when I think about Dubai, for example, I think it would be really interesting to move to UAE and live like the Muslim thing, like the prayer 5 times a day and going to the mosque and all that stuff.
I miss hearing the call to prayer.
Yeah, I could too. So even though that, it would be just really interesting to deliberately live according to that philosophy, and then, go to Jerusalem and do the Jewish way for a couple of years, and then go to Shanghai and do it that way for a couple of years. And that to me would be like we probably could kind of brainstorm and make a list of like, if you do the following 38 actions and you follow through and you do this, you will have the life that you want. Isn't it funny that it really can be almost that simple for almost anybody? I mean, shit, with like personal training, because when it comes to physical stuff, it's like, when somebody says, how do I lose weight? It's like, well, you eat less.
Yeah, if we were to put it into an equation, it's really simple.
Yeah.
Like it's a really simplistic way to go like, but then we make it so complex or make so many excuses as to why we can't follow this equation.
Yeah. Do you know the same is true tech and programming wise, where people make websites so complicated, and I think it's partially because, say, the WordPress software wants to be everything to everyone. They power a third of the internet or something, or a third of websites or Word. It has to be everything to everyone. It has to be the ultimate Swiss Army knife with 1,900 tools in it. And so if you just need a screwdriver, you don't really need WordPress.
But it's also a terrible screwdriver as well.
Right. And then if a programmer wants to get a job at Google or Facebook, they want to go learn these complex technologies that a Google or Facebook size company needs, which is not what a guy who needs a website needs. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So it's like it's almost like somebody handing you like a 600-page manual of the mathematical equation on how to lose weight. It's like,
what do I do with this?
Yeah, you really don't need all that. It's really a lot simpler than all that. Anyway. But dude, I love do you remember we talked about how strong opinions are useful to other people? The Brian Eno as the record producer.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was like earlier yesterday or Monday.
Yeah.
That just being the one with the strong opinion is useful. When I was at Berklee School of Music, we had a class that was called like the music business or professional music, whereas the rest of all of our classes were about the music itself, the chords, the harmony, the fingers on the strings. There was just this one class that said, okay, the business of music. And one day, like 2/3 of the way through the semester, he said, all right, everybody, special day today. I'm going to give you the formula on how you are going to get famous or to be a success. And with no apologies and no ifs, unless, he said, this is it, right? Get ready to write this down. You're going to do this. He said, we're in Boston. You're going to go to Harvard Business School. You're going to find an MBA that believes in this mission. You're going to get attractive members of the band that are objectively attractive. The visual is more important than this. You're going to meet with professional songwriters. He just like, bump.
Wow.
This is how to do it. And sure enough, if I think he was right. If you would have followed that methodology, it would be almost unavoidable that you would have gotten at least a pretty damn good success.
He sounds like somebody that really understood the game.
Yeah, because it's like we said yesterday, it's of no use if you watch what should I get, A or B, and in the end they're like, well, pros and cons about it. No, fuck you. Give me one answer.
Yep.
Just go argue for B.
Yeah.
Why B is the right choice. And that's what he did by laying it. And so I think we could probably do this for almost anything. Work with somebody that knows the industry a little bit, whatever that industry, even if it's the tranquility, actually industry, an expert in tranquility. It's like you said, the short Buddhist definition, enlightenment comes in.
I enjoy listening to like Buddhist monks and Rinpoches, and when they speak about this in like enlightenment and peace and tranquility and all of these things, and they are just so matter of fact.
Yeah.
And they're so like lighthearted, like, no, it's just this. And it's just like, oh, like, wow, we're really making this so much more complex than it needs to be, or not even wanting to grasp. I remember listening to a story about the Dalai Lama and how somebody asked him the question of I remember this really because I've had this a lot with myself, like the sense of not feeling worthy and not feeling enough, and how I think it was Joseph Goldstein that was saying this, which is like he's like my favorite like Dharma teacher. And he said that the Dalai Lama is usually very like calm and just like flowing. But then when somebody asked that question, he just became very stern and poignant and was like, no, that is incorrect. You are thinking about it incorrectly. Like that is not it. Like you are worthy. Like it was just so, no. Like it was this concept that you are grasping life on is just utterly incorrect right now. Where the rest of it is just kind of like being playful and being able to kind of like talk around the edges of it. And so for me, I enjoy that fact. And again, like if we use the example of How to Live, like each chapter of being like, no, this is the poignant answer right now of how to actually be able to go through.
Ooh.
I think of that ability to choose a line and follow that.
Yeah.
And how great that is because, and then if we can bring that into mastery, there is that essence of, okay, so for me, when I think about mastery, my way of going about it was trying to literally travel the world and talk to the people in that. So when I was a personal trainer, I traveled the world, I did private internships, I did all the courses I could. Like it was either I'd spend money on a bloody home loan or like home deposit or like I've got money so I can jump on the next plane and do this next course sort of thing and going from there. And that's always been like my method. Who are the people that I can go and talk to that can collapse time for me to be like, hey, what is it that you learn? Why is it that you think about it that way? That's super interesting because that person said something completely different. Why are you saying that? Why is he saying that? Where is the truth in this? How do I figure out my own direction? All of that kind of stuff. And so I then think of mastery of having to go through the base. So if I use like a martial arts example, to me, like if kickboxing, I've done a lot of kickboxing over the years. There's just the same use of the same striking points over and over and over again, where it's the case you've got to get really good at the basics. Then once you learn it to a point, there becomes this area where you can now start to bend or break the rules where you couldn't have done that before. And then you can start adapting and doing it. So for me, it's like you emulate before you innovate. I want to emulate Derek's riding as much as I possibly can before I can innovate and then start going on my own path to it. So with this and mastery, how do you see this to be able to actually apply mastery to where I want to take life, where the listener wants to take life, where you want to take life?
The first step is to get out of your own head and zoom way out into seeing yourself through somebody else's eyes. If you imagine somebody that's helped over 10,000 people successfully lose weight, how you would look to their eyes, just like, there it is. That's all there is to it. You just got to do it. But I think it's kind of the same with some of these business consultants that like, did you read the E-Myth?
Yeah.
That guy helped so many small businesses. And he said, all right, look, this is it. You make this, make this org chart and you do the thing and you delegate and you make the manual. And this is what you need. This works. If you do this, you'll have a successful operation. Franchise prototype. And probably every channel, like you say that I haven't read a lot of the Buddhists, but if you say that a lot of these Buddhists are saying similar things, like it's really quite simple. It says, I'll bet you that. So the first step then is to get out of your own
way.
Yeah, your own way. So get out of your own tangled spider webs in the head where everything seems so complex. And you zoom out and realize that from the outside, you're an NPC. Wait, is that right? A non-playing?
No, yeah.
You're a very simple object to somebody that's looking from a distance. And to see yourself that simple, I think it helps make it digestible. Because then, I love this insight. Sorry, it's going to sound like a tangent, but it's related. When you're talking to a friend about your troubles, it's heartwarming because in order to communicate your troubles to a friend, you have to simplify them to communicate them. But a friend cares about you and will spend an hour or 2 or 3 or 6 with you and your troubles. But still, even to communicate something in a few hours means you have to simplify it just to communicate it. But now if you do like group therapy and you're in a room of 12 people and they're all willing to let you speak a bit, but not too much, you have to reduce your problem down to 5 minutes. And just the act of reducing it in your thoughts so that you can speak it in 5 minutes makes the problem smaller in your head. What did feel like a giant knot that cannot be unraveled is suddenly a piece of rope. And that's the benefit of group therapy, is the simplification. So I think it's kind of the same with what I'm saying about the success formula for whatever it may be. It probably starts with that zoom out, simplification. Yes, of course, there are going to be some nuances, but basically it's these 6 steps and you just have to do them, whether you feel like it or not. Just trust in the formula, follow these steps without questioning them. That was a nice thing about university, wasn't it? When I think about something I haven't felt since, is when you go to a school, they say, okay, this is economics 102, or this is this class. You're going to come every Wednesday from 9 to 12, or Wednesday and Friday, and at the end of the semester, you will know this subject. I think, I haven't had that in a long time. This just paint by numbers, just follow these steps, just do what we say and you will be good. It's been a long time since I've felt that, but I miss that.
What do you want that in now? Like on Monday, you said speaking Chinese.
Yeah, that's one that I'm ready to give my full attention. That's a big one for me. God, what that would unlock. I find it almost unfathomable right now that I could look at a page full of Chinese writing and read it no problem, or that I could just show up in the middle of China and just be as comfortable as I am right here.
Yeah.
And that's amazing to me. That seems very worthy. And it's amazing that that could happen in just a couple years' effort. You know, I met a guy in Mexico who moved there with his wife from Korea because she wanted to be a veterinarian and she couldn't find a veterinarian school that was open that she could afford. She found one in Mexico City. They accepted her, but she didn't speak any Spanish at all. She came from Korea. So she quickly in 6 months learned enough Spanish to be fluent enough that she's, attending medical school, veterinary medicine, still medical school in Spanish in Mexico.
That's incredible.
And it's like, okay, it can be done if you have enough inspiration. So it's amazing to me that I could, like, what we're doing now, it's August. I could, in February, show up to China completely fluent if I'd focused enough. That's amazing to me. So that's one.
How do you help your son have mastery in his life?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that on Monday. I've been thinking about that since.
Yeah, because it keeps ringing with me.
For now, I think my best answer is just that one about helping your kids see what greatness looks like.
Yeah.
So they can get that into their head and want to get there. I think it has to start with that. I'd never talked about the steps to mastery before, the steps to success. What are your thoughts on this? I just did a long monologue on it.
It's a very good question.
You've done it in your life a couple of times and you've coached others. And what are your thoughts?
I think the first thing is defining what it is that you want first. And again, how do you avoid mimesis? If you're hanging around people and everyone wants to build this tech company in Silicon Valley, chances are you want to build a tech company in Silicon Valley. So what is it that you want? From there, I think it's very much the case of who are the people that have trodden that path previously and being able to get a really good idea of how do I emulate before I innovate and being able to go down that path. So I know very much for myself, I was especially in the last company, I was emulating so much of these people that were around me, and therefore I created something that was very much around them.
Okay.
I see today in the little bubble in the world that I'm in, that so many people, and like how I mentioned on Monday, the 220 plus hours of consulting that I did in that year after selling, there were very similar issues and problems that these guys were saying. And it was stemming from them building a business that they didn't want at the end of the day. And why, let's say, I don't love the word scale, but I think why, I can see myself in this now. I can see why people struggle with scaling their business is because they actually don't want their business to grow.
Ooh, yeah.
How I said before, I've been half-assing this stuff because I wasn't clear on it. Now that I am, almost seems unavoidable, and just you just walk that path, dude. See that over there, just walk towards it.
Yeah.
I think the kind of success formula, if we continue on that, is I have to think more on this. I don't love the concept of, I remember talking to a guy, Alex Hormozy. Do you know him at all? No, okay. Anyway, I remember talking to Alex. He's got a really big social following, tremendous human being, really great guy. And I met him for the first time in 2018 in this private event in LA. And we actually had similar-ish businesses. His business at the time was serving gyms in the US. I was serving like online trainers that were worldwide. So we're in like the health and fitness industry both together, and they were doing remarkable at the time. And he said, Chris, you will win when you are able to go to the bottom of the barrel and turn losers into winners. And so I really took that to heart on the case of it's 100% our responsibility to get everyone to the win. And even to the case, the words came out of my mouth many a time where I'd said to people, I was like, even if I have to drag you myself across the line, I will drag you across the line and do it myself, which hasn't served me, because you can join the dots on that one, but you can't force people to do things. And I think that's why I started the answer with what is it that you want and being clear on that. Because I think one of the biggest obstacles somebody will simply have is them getting in their own way.
I hadn't thought of those two things together. The clarity of exactly what you want and getting in your way. Like I said, yeah, first, what do you want? And then are you being in, what's getting in the way of that? Two quick Tony Robbins related things related to that is in his book called Awaken the Giant Within, he tells a story about a man that was trying to quit eating chocolate and came to his event, stopped eating chocolate, came back a few years later and said, guess what? I'm eating chocolate again. And there was more to the story that I forget the details, but the point was, he said, in that moment, I realized I'd made a mistake, is that I let the attendees think that I was the one making the change in them. And from that moment on, I've made sure that everybody knows that they are the ones making the change. I can give them some perspectives, some tools, but ultimately they are the ones doing it themselves. They can't shake the chocolate at me saying, you didn't change me enough. Okay, so that's one thing related to what you said about the dragging you. And then the clarity thing, years later, well, in 2004, I contacted Tony Robbins' company to say, I think I need a personal coach. And so they just assigned me to somebody, which is funny because I found out later he was like younger than me and like not successful by anybody's definition, but he was a really good coach. And so I went to him with two specific things I wanted to address. I wanted to be a great Ruby programmer and I wanted to lose weight. So the Ruby programmer one, he said, okay, well, how will you know when you're a great Ruby programmer? I went, oh, I don't know. He said, well, think about it for a minute. And I got time. And so I thought for a few minutes and I said, okay, I own 6 books about the Ruby programming language. If I went through all 6 of those books and did all the exercises until I knew them, I would be a great Ruby programmer. He said, okay, how many chapters are in those books? I said, what do you mean on average? He said, no, combined. I went, no, you want me to add them up? He goes, yeah, take a minute and add them up. I went, okay. Got them off my shelf. I looked at the index. Okay, this has 23 chapters. Next one. It just took a few minutes while he sat there on the phone and came to a total of, let's say, 122 chapters. And he said, okay, 122 total chapters. How many days do you want to give this? How many days you want it to take to become a great Ruby programmer? I said 3 months. He said, okay, so that's, you got about 4 chapters a day. Can you do 4 chapters a day? No, wait, no, that would be 1 month. Okay, whatever it was. He said, yeah, could you do 5 chapters a week? And I said, yeah. I said, okay, so this is your mission. And suddenly there was this clarity, like, oh my God, it had been a foggy thing in my head of, I want to be a great Ruby programmer. But it was him helping define it so specifically that helped me. And even with Chinese, I just realized that actually writing is more important to me than speaking. I'm not looking to like hang out in China a lot and chit chat with strangers a lot. And if you go to China, you'll see everybody's just on their phone all day. So I was like, really, if I'm a very fluent writer and reader, that's 90% of it. Then, 10% is the end of it. So I was like, well, that shapes my priority. Well, that's okay. I want to be a great writer and reader and at least an okay speaker. And I was like, wow, what clarity, how helpful that is to define sharply exactly what you want.
Yeah, it was, from what I heard, he defined done first and then just reversed engineered. What are the steps that you have to take to get there? Because for me, I think like on Monday, one of the words that we talked about that I think you embody really well and positively is discipline, and how I think of let's say the formula to mastery, the formula to success, or the formula to whatever you want to get to. For me, I wanted to like continue to peel that onion and to be like, what really is the underlying thing that's needed for that? Like, what is that core essence? And for me so far, it's funny, even now thinking that, I think ultimately just give up the attachment to the whole thing altogether and it goes away. But okay, if we're going to hold on to the attachment of it, is for me, when somebody says like, oh, Chris, you're so disciplined with your nutrition and your training and all of that stuff. Or like, okay, so when someone says like, oh my God, Chris, I want to get in shape like you, like one of my quippy answers is just going to be like, okay, great. For the next 10 years, don't miss a workout. Then come back and ask me. Right? Not super helpful of an answer. And so for me, when I kept going, I was like, oh no. And then when like, oh, you're so disciplined in that manner, I'm like, and this is what I see in you, and this could just be projection and wrong, but it's like, yes, you're disciplined, but you're not disciplined for the sake of being disciplined. It's simply a side effect or a byproduct of your identity. You see yourself as a writer now, so therefore you write.
I see what you mean. Okay. Which shapes your value system.
Yes.
Who are you defines what's most important to you. What's most important to you defines your actions.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, so for example, I think we talked a little bit about Mark Manson on Monday. I'm like, that's one question I'd love for him to join the dot for me, because he's talked about values. I'm like, so from the values, where does the identity then sit in so that you be who you need to be? Because then there is no friction. Then there is no obstacle. You are, because there is no obstacles for you to be who you want to be, to live and feel the way that you want to feel. Am I making any sense there? Because for me, it's like, okay, if you have the identity of somebody that loves and respects and eats the way in that manner for themselves, then that's just what you do. If you have the identity of the person that you go to the gym every day or however many days, that's what you do. Like there isn't that friction point. There isn't I remember reading in the 7 Habits of
Highly Effective People.
Yeah. No, it wasn't that one. Actually, it was the Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Oh, I never read that. Okay.
I'm forgetting his name. Oh my God. I can't believe it. Anyway, I remember reading in this book where it's a case of, and it made the example, if you make the decision that you're just going to be faithful to your wife and you're never going to even contemplate, do you know what I mean, being with anybody else, that option is not even on the table anymore. It doesn't even take your energy because it's not even there. Yeah. So if your identity doesn't allow that to be there, then you have this freeing up of energy and capacity for somebody. Like in the book that I'm again blanking on the name of, everybody's read this book. Anyway, I'll come back to the name of the book. One of the chapters at the end, he talks about sexual trans.
Oh, Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich. Thank you so much. Booyah.
Yeah, that was
blazingly right in front of it. Yes. He talks about, and I think most people never made it to that far down the book.
Yeah.
And also they completely gloss over that, and why I think it's interesting how when you're able just to take that energy, you said before, when you made the decision, I'm not going to be in a romantic relationship, you had this freeing up. You weren't chasing tail. So therefore you weren't having to waste all of this energy on that pursuit and that thing. So therefore you could transmute that energy to somewhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case of like me wanting to be able to figure out then how do you craft the identity that you want? How do I craft the identity that I want so that X is unavoidable?
Oh, interesting. Whereas I took it into this, like, here are the 5 steps. You're talking about the identity.
Right.
You know, I was going to say, could you email me a reminder? But no, I will send myself a reminder to email you something I just read this morning that I think will apply. So hold on. I email myself from my phone when I want to get something from the phone to computer. So I'm going to say, Tyler Cowan to Chris, and send from the top of my bookmark the instructions on how to be a sustainable public thinker, and email it to Chris.
Cool.
The reason I switched to iPhone from Android years ago is I found it does better voice recognition for me. Okay. Anything to avoid typing on a phone. But in short, Tyler Cowan, who is a successful public intellectual, said, here are 15 practices I follow to keep. He said, I do practice my craft. And he used athletes as an example. He said, a professional athlete keeps practicing. Even if they're Kobe Bryant, they're the top of their game, he still practices every day. He said, so I think all of us in any endeavor should keep practicing every day, whatever matters to it. And so then he said, so here's how I practice continuing to be a public intellectual. It's like, whoa. And then he published that like 4 years ago. And then what he just posted this morning that surprised me is he said basically how to not lose your shine as a public intellectual. And it was like how to avoid getting into a rut. And one of those things was like, watch out when you get the feeling that you're saying something just for the attention. And he had a simple little metric. One of the like subtle ideas was, if a dumb person could also have posted that, maybe you should skip it. And another one was just find the positive, not the negative angle. He said it's always too easy to swipe at others and take a stab and something. So that's too easy. Finding the positive angle is harder. So if you find that you're tempted to publicly attack something, don't. Just wait. And anyway, I should send that to you because it might be kind of being who you want to be. It's more kind of making this kind of searching for wisdom.
Yeah.
Your main pursuit.
Yeah.
Might have a kind of set of values like that. This is how to be in order to keep doing this.
I appreciate you picking that up. I think one of the core questions I've wanted to answer for myself is, how do I live a life I admire?
Mm-hmm. But you've been doing it so far, right? For the most part.
I know I'm terribly critical on myself. And so, yes, Derek, I have had many more flashes of, oh, wow, like, wow, I'm doing it. I am it. Like, this is amazing. And I'm truly embodying the gratefulness, but I know I'm still got a ways to go. Yeah. Yeah. I feel sadness even when I say that.
It's funny. It's surprising for me to hear you say that. I think it's one of the things where we differ. I think my expectations for myself are very, very low. Even when I was running my company, there was this cute letter that I emailed to my first employee where I thought that was as big as it was ever going to get for a while. I just thought it was going to just be me and John, and he was part-time. And then one night, it's, wow, this thing could get huge. And I mean huge. I mean, we might need a second employee. I was like, we might need to get 3 PCs and like figure out how to network them together. We might have like 1,000 musicians using this service. I mean, it could get that big. So it's like years later, I had like, 250,000 people using the service and I had 85 employees. And when people would ask about like, what are your goals with the business? It's like, yeah, here's my goals with the business: to get 1,000 musicians, to have 3 employees in my living room, by the way. I never thought it would expand past my house. So I said, yeah, I passed all those long ago, so I'm done. Everything else that happens is just, whoa, what a surprise. I didn't go set new big goals. I just, so I think I'm kind of that same way with I have very low expectations for myself, and I tend to just, I think I live a little bit animalistic, where I just kind of wake up and do what I feel like doing. I don't.
And when you said that to me on Monday, you blew my mind.
Really? Why?
Because I know what I'm doing today for pretty much the time that I need to be doing it. And I might have even said on Monday how like much of the time I felt like this time pressure of like, I've got to go from one thing to the next, to the next. And it's been so interesting. Like these few days here, I've not had that at all. Like I have nothing that I have to go to after this. I know I'll go for a walk. There's a hot yoga studio across from the Airbnb. I might do that later. Like I'll have to cook some food. I'll have to pack my bag. I'll have to order the Uber for tomorrow, but like nothing has a time that I have to like nail it by. So I appreciated you saying that, because I could just see in myself like, oh, like let go of that, Christopher. And then I think about like, here we talk about equations. Like if we use the word happiness, it's like happiness is like haves divided by wants.
Ooh, wait, hold on. Wait, haves divided by want. Sweet.
Because the most powerful part of division is the denominator. So if I can lower the denominator, you get a greater output from it.
I've never heard that little formula. I like that. And yeah, maybe that's my thing, man. I want so little divided by 0.1.
Well, it's do you mean in Buddhism, they refer to the hungry ghost? Do you know what I mean? Whereas tiny mouths, massive stomach, and you're constantly wanting to feed yourself entirely. You can never be satiated. Your desires are always there. They're always so much stronger than what it is that you could have. pure recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for unavoidable suffering, the hungry ghost. And so I think that's very much the case of where very recently I've been thinking, I was like, well, why am I wanting to strive and go after these things? And we've had email exchanges ages ago, and I've got it all saved. And there was a question around enough and how do you know when something is enough? And a part of your answer to me was, what effect or what change will it have in my life if I actually do have this? And going down that thread, well, what changes is actually going to do this?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, is another 20, 30 million in the bank account going to do any difference for my life?
Right.
No. I still want to be here. I still want to be having this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I'll still be wearing these clothes. Like, nothing else changes here. Like, and I think if you have like an XY graph, and it's like the happiness to income, and how originally decades ago it was like $70,000, and it plateaus out at happiness.
Yeah.
And I think if you equate it to today's dollars, it's probably 100,000. But now it shows, even Scott Galloway now, I think I read his works on this and how it does continue to go upwards the more, but it really started to flatten out the curve. And where now I think of it for myself with like, what is enough?
Mm-hmm.
And if we use money as an example, I think money is an easy one because it's an easy scoreboard for us to all look at, where it's a much harder scoreboard to know like peace or tranquility that we want within ourselves. And so for me, it was the case of like, what is enough? And is a pursuit of something such as money in somebody's life, it actually then has a negative side effect because you overshoot where you actually need to be, and you're going to do it at the detriment of other parts of your life. And the way that I thought this was, I read Rudolf Steiner's The Philosophy of Freedom. And what I really liked about that book was how he uses the definition. So freedom with the ending DOM is very much the freedom from the external. So I have the time, I have the money, I have the things that I can go and do the way that I want to do. Where in German, Freiheit, so HEIT being the endings, is the sense of inner freedom. So it's kind of the sense of inner peace that we want. So you have external freedom and you have internal freedom. And ultimately what we want is internal freedom. We want the external to hopefully give us what the internal feeling is that we want at the end of the day. So therefore, what do I actually need to do to have that internal feeling?
Right. If I only had 100 million, then I'd be free. Right. Whereas instead you can just go straight for it. Oh, it's such an interesting subject.
How have you thought about that? So you sold CD Baby, from what I gathered, please correct me where I'm wrong, you sold CD Baby. You haven't pursued other ventures for money making being the purpose, and you give everything away from your books, don't you? Okay, well, I'm going to ask about that as well, but how did you have the brilliance, the insight, the cojones to say, I don't want to play that game anymore?
It was just logical. I'll try. You'll be the second person I've ever said this to, and see if it worked. The guy who I said it to last week said that this thing I'm about to say next helped it finally make sense to him. We'll see if that was just him or if you think this is objectively good. But I said it was as simple as this. I said, just imagine the metaphor where for some reason I've got 1,000 cans of beans in my basement. I am set for life. I will never need any more beans. This is all I will ever be able to eat in my lifetime. And then somebody shows up at my door saying, delivery of 5,000 more beans. Where do you want them? I'd say, I don't. There's no, here, give them to any, look, there are people that need these beans. If you give me these beans, it'll just be wasted. It'll be completely lost on me. Please, there are people who need beans in the world. Please do not give me these beans. That's how I felt with the money. I felt like the company was profitable. I had $4 million in net profit. I had already paid off all my debts, including a mortgage, whatever. I think I even helped my family with their mortgage or something. So it's like I had $4 million just free and clear before the offer to buy the company. So then I tried to just pick a good price. We picked 22 million. And so I spent a few months going, what the fuck am I going to do with $22 million? And I was open-minded about it. It's like, could I do with $22 million? And I talked to a lot of friends about it. I spent a lot of time in my diary about it. And after 3 months, my lawyer, who had a background in tax law, said, so what are you going to do with the money? I said, I'm just going to give it away. And he said, what? I said, well, I've just thought it through. I just don't need the money. And in fact, I think having it will make me do stupid things. If I knew my bank account had $22 million in it, I might catch myself going, I'll get a Ferrari because, I mean, to me, it's essentially the same as a Honda.
Yeah.
Neither one will put a dent in my bank account, so why not get the Ferrari? I said, but I don't want to do that. I would rather not even have the money. And he said, are you serious? I said, I'm very serious. He said, how serious? I said, completely serious. He said, what about irrevocably, irreversibly serious? Like you will never regret it if you gave it all away right now. I said, yes, I've thought about this a lot. I'm completely congruent. I would never regret it if I gave it all away right now. He said, well, then the deal is not done yet. We can structure this deal in a different way. He said, I know from my background in tax law that you could set up a charitable trust, transfer the ownership of the company into the charitable trust right now. And as of like in 2 weeks from now, you will no longer own the company anymore. It will be owned by a 501c3 charity by US law, meaning you are never allowed to receive $1 of that ever. He said, but the advantage is the entire 22 million will go to charity. Whereas if you retain ownership of the company, you'll get $22 million. You'll give $7 million to the IRS and only give $15 million to charity. If you're really going to give it all away, let's structure it so it never touches your hand in the first place. I said, even better. That's great. To be able to say like it never touched my hands anyway. That's what I want. And he said, okay, I'll get this set up for you. So he set up the charitable trust to transfer the ownership of the company and that. The money never touched my hands. It's great. So to me, it was just logical. It's just, don't give me more beans.
It's incredible. I love that.
But you see how it's like, it's not, I kind of don't like when people give me too much credit, and it's like, it's not altruistic. I don't have a big, giant, swelling heart that wants to save the world. It was just, I don't need the beans, you know? I'm never going to use them.
There's so much there for me, so thank you.
Well, when you were talking about this, I was thinking, you said it first. I would love that you said, I was thinking the exact words, money's the easy one. That's easy to look at.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you come to things like friends. I was just thinking that for a long time I was pursuing friends, meaning like I'm feeling a little lonely in New Zealand. I want to meet friends. And so I did. And I made some really good friends. Like I have more for it. My two best friends now, I didn't know them a year and a half ago.
Wow.
So in the last year and a half, I met two people that really like, we became like talk every day, best, like share our life friends. But now as I'm still on the path of making new friends, I've started to go, wait, maybe two is enough for me.
Yeah.
You know, like two people that I talk to every day that know everything. I don't know if I could handle 10 more, 30 more, you know? Oh, wait, hold on. Maybe I've already reached my enough point for friends and I don't want any more. I don't know. So there's no answer to that yet. It's like, that's harder than money, right? Money it's like nice, easier to talk about. But what would be another one? Maybe learning. Maybe there's like a crunch of like how much you can learn. Sometimes I think about the ratio of output versus input.
Yeah.
I like to keep my output higher than my input, input's more important to me ultimately than input. I would not want to okay, never mind. I'll simplify. Yeah. If I had to pick one or the other, I would just pick output. I would not want to be overloaded on input without much output. That would hurt. If I had to pick one or the other, output's more valuable to me. So sometimes like I haven't really read anything. I haven't read any books in a few months right now. And a few times I start to, I like lay down, like, it's been nice to read a book. I get like a few pages in. I'm like, I'm feeling full, man. I just want to, I want to go write. I feel like
you've got more to give.
I've got more to give right now. It's like, I don't want to learn anything new right now. Sounds weird to say. I never thought I'd say that out loud, but it's honest right now.
I love that.
Like, I don't want to learn anything new right now. There's a lot I want to make right now. A lot I want to create. So yeah,
because there's like you have a thesis, you have an and then you have synthesis, and it's kind of like this cycle that goes around.
I've never heard this. Wait, say that again.
Thesis, antithesis, synthesis.
Wow, I've never heard those put together.
And for me, it was like, oh, you're in this synthesis. Like you've got everything there. You've got this. You've got the inputs. Now you need to make something of the inputs.
Quick aside, and it's related, Indonesia, UAE, you mentioned renewing or pursuing to residency in both those places. But why? Just to have it as a backup?
Yeah, I think it was kind of under the guild of sovereignty.
Okay.
So where it worked out really well was we were in Bali when started. And what was very interesting was I actually had an event in Venice, California booked to hold. And I went and did a breathwork session with this amazing breathwork, Edward Dangerfield. And I remember coming out of this breathwork session and I just had like this epiphany of just like, I can't do this event. Can't do it. I've got to cancel absolutely everything. I had team members from Australia. I was like, I'm going to cancel their flights. I'm going to cancel my flights. I'm going to turn everything off, blah, blah, blah. Because there was some brewing of COVID.
Oh, so you had this feeling not in Venice, but before Venice.
Before Venice.
Okay, good.
And so then I canned the whole trip, which was amazing because I actually knew a friend that went to America at the exact same time and got stuck there for a while as well. So we were in Bali when COVID happened, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, we had a really positive experience during that time.
Mm-hmm.
All the tourists left, a lot of expats left.
Yeah.
A lot of locals went back to their villages because obviously the work wasn't there.
Right.
And so our experience of Bali at the time was the best cafes and restaurants that ever stayed open. The gym only closed for 1 day out of that entire period. They closed the beaches, which was really weird.
Huh.
So like you couldn't go to the beaches unless like it didn't not make sense at all. And the only negative, which I believe we actually turned into a positive, was we eventually, after like a year, it was like the end of 2020, we flew back to Australia because we didn't know how much longer this was going to go on for. And we're like, we got to see family.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to fly back to Australia and we had to do a 14-day quarantine in Perth. And that was we only had 2 daughters at the time. So it was 4 of us, and they put us in a 1-bedroom apartment and they welded the window shut and the whole thing. And I remember going in, my wife was crying. I remember going in being like, we're going to make this a positive experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're going to make this fun. How do we have this fun? And so the girls, like, we all look back and do it like, wow, we spent 14 days in this room, like, and we had a really good time for it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we had a great time. Honestly, we had a really good time.
I was surprised how hard quarantine was because I think like hotel for 2 weeks, great.
Yeah.
But no, when it's like the windows don't open and you're just, and I was like, okay, I'm a little stir crazy.
It was nutty, but I was like, we're going to make this. I want the girls to see resilience through this. And I think we had a really good time. Like, it was.
I've never eaten potatoes again since then. The room service, 3 times a day, they brought meals in a little plastic box, fucking potatoes, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The other things too, but always with the baked potatoes. I was like, oh, no, or ever again.
I could not believe how much wastage they had. Because they would bring food to our door and we were like, oh no, we're not going to eat that food. And we'll order food from somewhere else. And they would leave it. And I was like, oh, fellas, you can. And they're like, no, we have to by law. And I was like, well, can you take it to a charity or the people that don't? They're like, no, we have to just throw it out.
Yeah.
I was just like,
I know.
The waste that is going on right now hurt my soul.
Yeah, same.
Sorry, I have no idea how we got
so
there.
let's get back to the resident visa for a second.
Yes,
So
sorry. Sovereignty.
But nuts and bolts for a second. So there's no downside to, so it doesn't sound like you're planning on living in Dubai anytime soon, but yet you went to the effort of getting that visa. And did you go for, which one did you qualify for? Like, I know some of their different visas. Did you get the 5-year, 10-year, or what visa, resident visa did you get? Oh, the one for having a company as the owner of the company.
Yes.
Okay.
Whatever that is.
So it's like a work visa. Is it for 5 years, do you think?
5, no, it was for 5.
Okay.
Because the Emirati ID was done, company was set up, bank accounts were set up, all that stuff was all done. And then it wasn't that long, and then I eventually moved it to Singapore.
Okay. And then, but you're keeping that active. Do you have to show up like once a year, or what is it?
6 months.
Every 6 months you have to just go through just for a day or something?
1 day.
Okay.
1 day to keep that going. And then the Indonesian KITAS, the investor KITAS, I think there's about 3 years of that until I have to renew that again. But again, like what we spoke about, we've got the villas.
Oh, right.
There, so that's easily
So the villas
done.
is enough of an investment for you?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is that why you got the villas? Would you have otherwise?
No,
For
we
the
would have
visa?
done it anyway.
Okay.
We saw the opportunity there of this is a really easy side thing to do that has really good cash flow, very little input. I literally don't do anything for it. Lauren probably spends 1 to 2 hours a month on it for it to tick over. So that's been super awesome and easy. And
By the way, what part of the island did you live on?
Canggu.
Oh, I don't know that. Where's that?
Seminyak.
Oh, okay. All right.
North of Seminyak, up the coast of Seminyak by probably about 20 minutes.
Okay.
And then there's like Canggu, then there's Perenan, then there's Mungu, and then there's Sese. Sese is kind of like the new expat area the last couple of years, which is really good. So we've got a couple of villas there and in Canggu.
Cool.
Yeah.
My kid was conceived in Bali, and he knows that.
Oh, really?
With my ex and I, we had decided not to have kids, but that was the night that, in hindsight, she goes, that's when that happened. So he knows that he was conceived in Bali and born in Singapore. Okay, so you keeping both those. So I think you brought up COVID to say that it was like because you had the visa, it was nice that when COVID hit, you were able to just stay.
It was like this, I have a backup.
Okay. Yeah, right now I don't have any other. Technically, I have India. I'm what's called an overseas citizen of India, which looks like a passport. It says overseas citizen of India and same shape as a passport, except it's only 3 pages. So it's no good for travel outside of India, but it means that when you enter India, you show them this along with whatever your country's passport is, and you're treated as a citizen in India. I can own land, bank accounts, have jobs, whatever, and I could live there for the rest of my life. And so can my kid has it too. So I like that. So I guess technically I have that as an eternal, and that's nice because I don't have to renew it ever. It's just I have that for life now.
That's really cool.
But I have been thinking about UAE. UAE, I would have to, dude, one of the core things I've been challenging when we were talking like an hour ago about, do I even need blank, 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 whatever it might be?
Yeah.
I started thinking about a home. I kept thinking that okay, even to get UAE residency, I was planning on I love Dubai. I love it as a central home base. I'll buy an apartment. 2 million dirhams is about 700,000 US dollars. I'll buy a 2 million dirham place. And it'll just be my apartment. And like we talked about, let friends stay there when I'm not there. And somewhere in there I went, wait a minute. Again, I don't want to have $22 million because I might just buy a Ferrari. Come on, hold on a second. We're talking about almost $1 million just for a resident visa. And UAE is small enough. Can I really imagine myself spending more than 30 days at a time there? It's I'd probably love my first 30 days. Second 30 days, not so much. And then I'd be ready to get out. If that's how I'm thinking about this, wouldn't it make more sense to just be a tourist and come in for 30 days? And especially for that whole region, if it's the Arab culture I'm wanting or being in that part of the world, damn, there's so many places right next to each other. Go to Oman for 30 days.
Go to
UAE
Bahrain.
For 30 days, Bahrain for 30 days. Kuwait for maybe 30 days. Saudi Arabia, definitely. But even Saudi Arabia has a thing where if you just right now they do have a visa where if you give them $250,000 US, they make you a resident for life. No renewal ever needed. $250,000, and I think that even includes dependents. That's it. You are a legal resident of Saudi Arabia for life.
Wow.
No renewal or other qualifications needed. $250,000 up front, you're in. Forever.
I've only heard, I think there's one other, Georgia, the country Georgia, I think might have that as well.
Georgia's special thing is they have a 365-day tourist visa available for almost every country. Anybody can just go to Georgia and hang out for a year as a tourist. Leave for a day, come back for another year. So you could live as a tourist in Georgia forever. And I found out that as a New Zealand citizen, so it's probably the same with Australia, Canada, Mexico, UK, all 3 of those will give you an instant 6-month tourist visa.
Oh, really?
No permission needed. What's usually a 90-day visa is 6 months. So I always think about that too. Damn, even if I want I just want to chill for a while. Go to Canada for 6 months. And then if I'm still feeling like I need comfort, go to England for 6 months. I mean, that's as comfortable as life gets. England and Canada,
It's gorgeous.
I've been questioning this. Again, I feel weird saying this, but I'm questioning the whole idea of needing a home at all.
I vibe with that.
If what I want is to keep moving in life.
Lauren's the one that just said to me, she goes, I just want to have a home in Australia to know that we can come back to. And I was like, okay, that's cool. No dramas. But for me, the ultimate home is the place with no obstacles. Well, there is no obstacles. There's nothing actually there.
Nice. Divide by 0. Well, that's it. We covered all the things.
I love it.
All there is to talk about.
So good.
If we are right, this has been really wonderful.
This has been so fantastic, Joe. Thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this episode and it's vibed with you, then make sure that you hit subscribe, whether you're on the YouTube or on the podcast. And importantly, if there is any guests that you want me to have on the show or specific questions or topics that you want me to be able to cover for you, simply put it into the YouTube comments or send me an Instagram DM. That way I can make sure you're getting the most out of actually being here.